Postern of Fate by Agatha Christie. Performed by Beau McKenna. Four great gates has the city of Damascus. Postern of Fate, the desert gate, disaster's cavern, fort of fear. Pass not beneath, O caravan, or pass not singing. Have you heard that silence where the birds are dead? Yet something pipeth like a bird. Books, said Tuppence. She produced the word rather with the effect of a bad-tempered explosion. What did you say? Said Tommy. Tuppence looked across the room at him. I said books. I see what you mean, said Thomas Beresford. In front of Tuppence were 3 large packing cases. From each of them, various books had been extracted. The larger part of them was still filled with books. It's incredible, said Tuppence. You mean the room they take up? Yes. Are you trying to put them all on the shelves? I don't know what I'm trying to do, said Tuppence. That's the awkward part of it. One doesn't know ever exactly what one wants to do. Oh dear, she sighed. Really, said her husband. I should have thought that was not at all characteristic of you. The trouble with you has always been that you knew much too well what you do want to do. What I mean is, said Tuppence, that here we are, getting older, getting a bit, well, let's face it, definitely rheumatic, especially when one is stretching. You know, stretching, putting in books and lifting things down from shelves, or kneeling down to look at the bottom shelf for something, and then finding it a bit difficult to get up again. Yes, said Tommy. That's an account of our general disabilities. Is that what you started to say? No, it isn't what I started to say. What I started to say was, it was lovely to be able to buy a new home and find just the place we wanted to go and live in, and just the house there we'd always dreamt of having, with a little alteration, of course. Knocking 1 or 2 rooms into each other, said Tommy, and adding to it what you call a veranda and your builder calls a loggia, though I prefer to call it a loggia. And it's going to be very nice, said Tuppence firmly. When you've done it, I shan't know it. Is that the answer? Said Tommy. Not at all. All I said was that when you see it finished you're going to be delighted, and say what an ingenious and clever and artistic wife you have. All right, said Tommy. I'll remember the right thing to say. You won't need to remember, said Tuppence. It will burst upon you. What's that got to do with books? Said Tommy. Well, we brought 2 or 3 cases of books with us, the ones we really couldn't bear to part with. And then, of course, what-you-call-ems, I can't remember their name now, but the people who were selling us this house, they didn't want to take a lot of their own things with them, and they said if we'd like to make an offer they would leave things including books. And we came and looked at things, and we made some offers, said Tommy. Yes, not as many as they hoped we would make, I expect. Some of the furniture and ornaments were too horrible, but when I came and saw the various books, I found 1 or 2 of my own special favourites. Now, here they all are among our own books, only now we've got such a terrible lot of books, and I don't think the shelves we have made are going to be nearly enough. We could sell them, said Tommy. I don't suppose they're the sort of books people would want to buy very much, said Tuppence. And in the meantime, we have to put them into the shelves and look inside them, of course, each time to see whether it's a book I do really want and I can really remember. I'm trying to get them roughly, well, you know what I mean, sort of sorted. Well, I'll help you, said Tommy. He came over, tilted the case so that the books fell out, gathered up armfuls of them, and went to the shelves and shoved them in. I'm putting the same-sized ones together. It looks neater, he said. Oh, I don't call that sorting, said Tuppence. We need to look at them. We may find treasures. What, 1 old favourite you've forgotten about? Not exactly that. I meant something startling, surprising, something that'll make all the difference to our lives. Oh, Tuppence, said Tommy, what a wonderful mind you've got. Much more likely to find something that's an absolute disaster. Nonsense, said Tuppence. One must have hope. It's the great thing you have in life, hope. Remember, I'm always full of hope. I know you are, said Tommy. He sighed. "I've often regretted it." Mrs. Thomas Beresford replaced the cuckoo clock by Mrs. Molesworth, choosing a vacant place on the third shelf from the bottom. She was getting on. Yes, surely she was getting on. If only she didn't stop and pull out old favourites and read them. Very agreeable, but it took a lot of time. She removed some more books. 3/4 of an hour passed with her absorbed first in Alice Through the Looking-Glass, then with Charlotte Young's Unknown to History. Her hands lingered over the fat shabbiness of the daisy chain. "Oh, I must read that again," said Tuppence. "To think of the years and years and years it is since I did read it. Oh, dear, how exciting it was." "I beg your pardon, ma'am?" "Oh, nothing," said Tuppence, looking round at her devoted henchman Albert, who had just appeared in the doorway. "I thought you called for something, madam, and you rang the bell, didn't you?" "Not really," said Tuppence. "I just leant on it, getting up on a chair to take a book out." "Is there anything I can take down for you?" "Well, I wish you would," said Tuppence. "I'm falling off those chairs, and I haven't got on very far with a third shelf up." Albert, mounted on a chair and banging each book in turn to dislodge such dust as it had managed to gather on it, handed things down. Tuppence received them with a good deal of rapture. "Oh, fancy! All these! I really have forgotten a lot of these. Oh, here's the amulet. And here's the new treasure seekers. Oh, I love all those. Now what's this one? Let me see. The red cockade. Oh, yes, that was one of the historical ones. That was very exciting." Albert handed down another selection. "What have we got here?" said Tuppence. "Treasure Island." "Well, that's nice, but of course I have read Treasure Island again, and I've seen, I think, 2 films of it. I don't like seeing it on films. It never seems right. Oh, and here's Kidnapped. Yes, I always like that. Any more Stevensons up there?" Albert handed some more books down, and Tuppence uttered a cry of excessive delight. "The Black Arrow, I declare. The Black Arrow. Now that's one of the first books really I ever got hold of and read." "Some more, madam?" "No, thank you, Albert. I think I'm rather too tired to go on now." She sat down in the chair, took the Black Arrow, opened the pages, and engrossed herself. "Oh, dear," she said. "How wonderful this is! I've really forgotten it quite enough to enjoy reading it all over again. It was so exciting." Silence fell. Albert returned to the kitchen. Tuppence leaned back in the chair. Time passed. Tommy came into the kitchen, rubbing his hands. "Cold out. Where's Tuppence?" "Oh, Missus? She's upstairs with the books." "Oh, dear," said Tommy. "All right, Albert. What are we having?" "Fillets of lemon sole, sir. Won't take long to do." "All right. Well, make it about 1/4 of an hour or so anyway. I want to wash first." Upstairs, on the top floor, Tuppence was still sitting in the somewhat shabby armchair, engrossed in the Black Arrow. Her forehead was slightly wrinkled. She had come across what seemed to her a somewhat curious phenomenon. On the particular page she had got to, someone had underlined some of the words, and Tuppence had spent the last 1/4 of an hour studying them. She didn't see why the words had been underlined. They were not in sequence, they were not a quotation. They seemed just to be words that had been singled out and underlined in red ink. She read under her breath, "Matcham could not restrain a little cry. Dick started with surprise and dropped the window from his fingers. They were all afoot, loosing sword and dagger in the sheath. Ellis held up his hand. The white of his eyes shone. Let large." Tuppence shook her head. It didn't make sense. None of it did. She went over to the table where she kept her writing things, picked out a few sheets of paper and copied things down. Now she realized something she hadn't realized before. "That makes all the difference," said Tuppence. She traced letters on the page. "So there you are," said Tommy's voice suddenly. "Dinner's practically in. How are the books going?" "This lot's terribly puzzling," said Tuppence. "You see, this is The Black Arrow of Stevenson's, and I wanted to read it again, and I began. It was all right, and then suddenly all the pages were rather curious because a lot of the words had been underlined in red ink. "Oh, well, one does underline things," said Tommy. "You know, something you want to remember, or a quotation or something." "I know what you mean," said Tuppence, "but it doesn't go like that. And it's letters, you see." "What do you mean by letters?" "Come here," said Tuppence. Tommy came and sat on the arm of the chair and read aloud. "Matcham could not restrain a little cry, and even died started with surprise, and dropped the window from his fingers. The two big fellows on the— Oh, it's mad," he said. "Yes," said Tuppence. "That's what I thought at first. But it isn't mad, Tommy." Some cowbells rang from downstairs. "That's supper in." "Never mind," said Tuppence. "I've got to tell you this straight away." "Oh, all right. Have you got one of your mare's nests?" "No, I haven't. It's just that I took out the letters, you see. Well, on this page, you see, well, the M of Matcham, which is the first word, the M is underlined, and the A, and after that there are 3 or 4 more words. They don't come in sequence in the book. They've just been picked out, I think, and they've been underlined, the letters in them, because they wanted the right letters. And the next one, you see, is the R from restrain underlined, and the Y of cry, and then there's J from Jack, O from shot, R from ruin, D from death, and A from death again." "Oh, for goodness sake," said Tommy. "Do stop." "Wait," said Tuppence. "Now, you see, if you take those letters out and write them in order on this piece of paper, do you see what you get with the ones I've done first? M-A-R-Y. Those 4 were underlined. That makes Mary." "All right," said Tommy. "It makes Mary somebody called Mary. A child with an inventive nature, I expect, who's trying to point out that this was her book." "All right, Mary," said Tuppence. "And the next thing that comes underlined makes the word Jordan. You see? Mary Jordan," said Tommy. "It's quite natural. Now you know her whole name. Her name was Mary Jordan." "Well, this book didn't belong to her. In the beginning, in a rather silly, childish-looking writing, it says Alexander Parkinson, I think." "Oh, well, does it really matter? I'm hungry," said Tommy. "Restrain yourself," said Tuppence. "The letters are picked from odd places on various pages. They don't run in sequence. There can't be anything in the words that matters. It's just the letters. Now then, we've got M-A-R-Y, Jordan, that's right. Now, do you know what the next words are? D-I-D-N-O-T, then D-I-E, and so on. Don't you see, Tommy? It reads, Mary Jordan did not die naturally. There you are, said Tuppence. Now the next sentence I've made is, it was one of us. I think I know which one. That's all. Can't find anything else. But it is rather exciting, isn't it? Look here, Tuppence, said Tommy. You're not going to get a thing about this, are you? What do you mean, a thing? Well, I mean working up a sort of mystery. Well, it's a mystery to me, said Tuppence. Mary Jordan did not die naturally. It was one of us. I think I know which one. Oh, Tommy, you must say that it is very intriguing. Tuppence? Tommy called as he came into the house. There was no answer. With some annoyance, he ran up the stairs and along the passage on the first floor. As he hastened along it, he nearly put his foot through a gaping hole and swore promptly. Another bloody careless electrician, he said irritably. Some days before he had had the same kind of trouble. Electricians, arriving in a kindly tangle of optimism and efficiency, had started work. Coming along fine now. Not much more to do, they said. We'll be back this afternoon. But they hadn't been back that afternoon. Tommy was not surprised. He was used now to the general pattern of labour in the building trade. They came, they showed efficiency, they made optimistic remarks, they went away to fetch something. They didn't come back. One rang up numbers on the telephone, but they always seemed to be the wrong numbers. If they were the right numbers, the right man was not working at this particular branch of the trade, whatever it was. Tommy hoped Tuppence had not fallen down the hole. He called again. "Tuppence? Tuppence?" He went on into the room upstairs where he had found her before, looking at another child's book, he supposed, getting excited again about some silly words that a silly child had underlined in red ink, on the trail of Mary Jordan, whoever she was, Mary Jordan who hadn't died a natural death. A long time ago, presumably, as the people who'd had the house and sold it to them had been named Jones, and they hadn't been there very long, only 3 or 4 years. No, this person of the Robert Louis Stevenson book dated from further back than that. Anyway, Tuppence wasn't here in this room, and there seemed to be no loose books lying about with signs of having had interest shown in them. "Where the hell can she be?" said Tommy. He went downstairs again, shouting once or twice. There was no answer. He examined one of the pegs in the hall. No signs of Tuppence's mackintosh. Then she'd gone out. Where had she gone? And where was Hannibal? Tommy varied the use of his vocal cords and called out for Hannibal. "Hannibal? Hannibal! Hanny boy, come on, Hannibal." No Hannibal. Well, at any rate she's got Hannibal with her, thought Tommy. He didn't know if it was worse or better that Tuppence should have Hannibal. Hannibal would certainly allow no harm to come to Tuppence. The question was, might Hannibal do some damage to other people? He was a friendly dog when taken visiting people, but people who wished to visit Hannibal, to enter any house in which he lived, were always definitely suspect in Hannibal's mind. He was ready at all risks to both bark and bite if he considered it necessary. Tommy walked a little way along the street, but could see no signs of any small black dog with a medium-sized woman in a bright red mackintosh walking in the distance. Finally, rather angrily, he came back to the house. Rather an appetizing smell met him. He went quickly to the kitchen, where Tuppence turned from the stove and gave him a smile of welcome. "You're ever so late," she said. "This is a casserole. Smells rather good, don't you think? I put some rather unusual things in it this time. There were some herbs in the garden. At least I hope they were herbs." "If they weren't herbs," said Tommy, "I suppose they were deadly nightshade, or digitalis leaves pretending to be something else. Where on earth have you been?" "I took Hannibal for a walk." Hannibal, at this moment, made his own presence felt. He rushed at Tommy, and gave him such a rapturous welcome as nearly to fell him to the ground. Hannibal was a small black dog, very glossy, with interesting tan patches on his behind and each side of his cheeks. He was a Manchester Terrier of very pure pedigree. "Where did you go? Just down the street for the shops?" "No, it's early closing day for the shops. No, I went to the cemetery." "Sounds gloomy," said Tommy. "What did you want to go to the cemetery for?" "Oh, to see what sort of people were buried there." Tuppence stirred the casserole vigorously. "Lots of people. I mean, it's very, very full up. It goes back well into the 1800s, and I think 1 or 2 older than that, only the stone's so rubbed away you can't really see." "I still don't see why you wanted to go to the cemetery." "I wanted to see if there were any Jordans buried there," said Tuppence. "Good gracious," said Tommy. "Are you still on that?" "Well, Mary Jordan died. We know she died. We know because we had a book that said she didn't die a natural death. But she'd still have to be buried somewhere, wouldn't she?" "Undeniably," said Tommy, "unless she was buried in this garden." "I don't think that's very likely," said Tuppence, "because I think that it was only this boy Alexander, who obviously thought he'd been rather clever in knowing that she hadn't died a natural death. But if he was the only person who'd made up his mind about that, or who'd discovered it, well, I mean, nobody else had, I suppose. I mean, she just died and was buried, and nobody said—" "Nobody said there had been foul play," suggested Tommy. "That sort of thing, yes. But there wasn't any Mary Jordan in the cemetery. There weren't any Jordans." "Disappointing for you," said Tommy. "Is that thing you're cooking ready yet? Because I'm pretty hungry. Smells rather good." "It's absolutely done," said Tuppence. "So, as soon as you've washed, we eat." "What's that parcel outside the back door?" asked Tommy as they ate. Is that the wine we ordered?" "No," said Tuppence. "It's bulbs. I'm going to talk to old Isaac about them." "Poor old fellow. He looks as if he might drop dead any minute," said Tommy. "Not at all," said Tuppence. "He's enormously tough, is Isaac. I've discovered, you know, that gardeners are like that. If they're very good gardeners, they seem to come to their prime when they're over 80, but if you get a strong, hefty-looking young man about 35 who says, 'I always wanted to work in a garden,' you may be quite sure that he's probably no good at all. But Isaac's wonderful. He knows about everything." Tuppence paused for a moment in thought, then added, "There ought to be some crocuses as well. I wonder if they're in the parcel too. Well, I'll go out and see. It's his day for coming, and he'll tell me all about it." "All right," said Tommy. "I'll come out and join you presently." Tuppence and Isaac had a pleasant time. The bulbs were unpacked, and discussions were held as to where things would show to best advantage. At 4 o'clock, Tuppence produced a brown teapot full of good, strong tea, placed a sugar basin full of sugar lumps and a milk jug by it, and called Isaac into the kitchen to refresh himself before departing. She then went in search of Tommy. She found him sitting on the top of a pair of steps in the attic room. Several books were around him on the floor, and there were noticeable gaps in the shelves. "So here you are," said Tuppence, "after pretending you weren't interested or anything. Did you find any other books that have got underlined things in them in red ink?" "No, nothing else." "How annoying," said Tuppence. "I think I agree it must have been Alexander's work. Master Alexander Parkinson," said Tommy. "That's right," said Tuppence. "The cemetery's full of Parkinsons." "What are you doing with that brass lamp you've got by the front door?" asked Tommy as they went downstairs. "I'm taking it to the White Elephant sale," said Tuppence. "Why?" asked Tommy suspiciously. "Well, I just thought it'd be a good chance to chat a bit with people," said Tuppence. Tommy looked hard at his wife. "I never know what you're up to, Tuppence, but I know the look in your eye when you are up to something." Tuppence ignored this. "You take Hannibal for a walk," she said. "I can't take him to the White Elephant sale. I don't want to get into a dogfight." "All right. Want to go for a walk, Hannibal?" Hannibal, as was his habit, immediately replied in the affirmative. His affirmatives and his negatives were always quite impossible to miss. He wriggled his body, wagged his tail, raised one paw, put it down again, and came and rubbed his head hard against Tommy's leg. Tuppence drove off in the car, and having seen her turn the corner, Tommy attached the lead to Hannibal's collar and took him down the street. Then he turned up the lane towards the church, and removed Hannibal's lead since very little traffic came up this particular road. Hannibal acknowledged the privilege by grunting and sniffing in various tufts of grass, with which the pavement next to the wall was adorned. "Good boy," said Tommy. They arrived at a side gate, which led into the churchyard, and Hannibal squeezed himself through the bars of the gate. "Come back, Hannibal," called Tommy. "You can't go into the churchyard." Tommy unlatched the gate, went through, and chased Hannibal lead in hand. Hannibal was now at the far corner of the churchyard, and seemed to have every intention of trying to gain access through the door of the church, which was slightly ajar. Tommy, however, reached him in time and attached the lead. Hannibal looked up, with the air of one who had intended this to happen all along, and wagged his tail. Since there seemed nobody to oppose Hannibal walking in the churchyard with his master, Tommy wandered around, checking perhaps Tuppence's researches of a former day. He looked first at a worn stone monument, more or less behind a little side door into the church. It was, he thought, probably one of the oldest. There were several of them there, most of them bearing dates in the 1800s. There was one, however, that Tommy looked at longest. "Odd," he said. "Damned odd." Tuppence was pleasurably surprised to find the brass lamp, which she and Tommy now regarded with repulsion, welcomed with the utmost warmth. "How very good of you, Mrs. Beresford, to bring us something as nice as that," said Miss Little. "Most interesting, most interesting. I suppose it must have come from abroad on your travels once." Miss Little was more or less in charge of things. Her surname was misleading. She was a large woman of ample proportions. "I hope you're coming to the sale, Mrs. Beresford." Tuppence assured her that she was coming, and asked if there were any services that she could render. "Ah, dear Mrs. Beresford, perhaps you would arrange the curio stall. I'm sure you're very artistic." "I'm not really at all artistic," said Tuppence, "but I would love to arrange the stall for you." The arrival of the vicar to say a few words of encouragement and good cheer to the helpers changed the subject. He also expressed himself very pleased to meet his new parishioner, Mrs. Beresford. "We know all about you," he said. "Oh, yes, indeed, and your husband. A most interesting talk I had the other day about you both. What an interesting life you must have had. I dare say it's not supposed to be spoken of, so I won't. I mean, in the last war. A wonderful performance on both your and your husband's part." "Oh, do tell us, Vicar," said one of the ladies, detaching herself from the stall where she was setting up jars of jam. "I was told in strict confidence," said the vicar. He turned back to Tuppence. "I think I saw you walking round the churchyard yesterday, Mrs. Beresford." "Yes," said Tuppence. "It seemed to me there were a great many Parkinsons buried there." Yes, indeed. There have always been big contingents of Parkinsons in this part of the world, though of course I don't remember any of them myself. But you do, I think, Mrs. Lupton." Mrs. Lupton, an elderly lady who was supporting herself on 2 sticks, looked pleased. "Oh, yes," she said. "I remember when Mrs. Parkinson was alive. You know old Mrs. Parkinson, the Mrs. Parkinson who lived in the manor house. Wonderful old lady she was. Quite wonderful." "And I saw some Summers and the Chattertons," said Tuppence. "Ah, I see you're getting up well with our local geography of the past." "I think I heard something about a Jordan. Annie or Mary Jordan, was it?" Tuppence looked round her in inquiring fashion. The name of Jordan seemed to cause no particular interest. Mrs. Lupton looked thoughtful. "Somebody had a cook called Jordan. I believe Mrs. Blackwell. Susan Jordan, I think it was." "Was that a long time ago?" "Oh, no, just about 8 or 10 years ago, I think. Not more than that." "Are there any Parkinsons living here now?" Tuppence asked. Mrs. Lupton shook her head. "Oh, no. They're all gone long ago." Tuppence, having got home, put the car away in the garage and walked round the house to the front door. Albert came to greet her. "Like some tea, madam? You must be very tired." "I don't think so," said Tuppence. "They gave me tea down at the Institute. Quite good cake, but very nasty buns. Where's Mr. Beresford? Is he out?" "Oh, no, he's upstairs, in the book room, or whatever you like to call it. I can't get out of the way of calling it the attic myself." "I shall go up and rout him out," said Tuppence. "Where's Hannibal?" "I think he's up there with the master." But at that moment Hannibal made his appearance. Having barked with the ferocious fury he considered necessary for a good guard dog, he had correctly assumed that it was his beloved mistress who had returned, and not someone who'd come to steal the teaspoons or to assault his master and mistress. He came wriggling down the stairs, his pink tongue hanging out, his tail wagging. "Where's master? Where's father? Is he upstairs?" Hannibal understood. He ran up a flight of stairs, turned his head over his shoulder, and waited for Tuppence to join him. "Well, I never," said Tuppence, as slightly out of breath she entered the book-room to see Tommy astride a pair of steps taking books in and out of the shelves. "Whatever are you doing? I thought you were going to take Hannibal for a walk." "We have been for a walk," said Tommy. "We went to the churchyard." Hannibal turned his head and came and rubbed his nose against her leg. "He's telling you," said Tommy, "that he's a very clever dog. Cleverer than you or I have been so far." "And what do you mean by that?" asked Tuppence. Tommy reached out his hand and took a book from the shelf in front of him. "Kidnapped," he remarked. "Oh yes, another Robert Louis Stevenson. The Black Arrow, Kidnapped, Katrina, and 2 others, I think. All given to Alexander Parkinson by a fond grandmother, and this one from a generous aunt." "Well," said Tuppence, "what about it?" "I've found his grave," said Tommy. "Found what?" "Well, Hannibal did. It's right in the corner against one of the small doors into the church. It's very rubbed and not well kept up, but that's it. He was 14 when he died. Alexander Richard Parkinson. Hannibal was nosing about there. I got him away from it and managed to make out the inscription in spite of it being so rubbed. 14, said Tuppence. Poor little boy. Yes, said Tommy. It's sad and— Yes, said Tuppence as he hesitated. Well, I wondered. I suppose, Tuppence, you've infected me. That's the worst of you. When you get keen on something, you don't go on with it by yourself. You get somebody else to take an interest in it too. Tuppence looked puzzled. I wondered if it was a case of cause and effect, Tommy said slowly. What do you mean, Tommy? I was wondering about Alexander Parkinson, who took a lot of trouble, though no doubt he enjoyed himself doing it, making a kind of code, a secret message in a book. Mary Jordan did not die naturally. Supposing that was true. Supposing Mary Jordan, whoever she was, didn't die naturally. Well then, don't you see, perhaps the next thing that happened was that Alexander Parkinson died. You don't mean— You don't think— Well, one wonders, said Tommy, and started me wondering. 14 years old. There was no mention of what he died of. I suppose there wouldn't be on a gravestone. But it might have been because he knew something that was dangerous to somebody else. And so he died. You mean he was killed? You're just imagining things, said Tuppence. Well, you started it. Imagining things or wondering. It's much the same thing, isn't it? We shall go on wondering, I suppose, said Tuppence, and we shan't be able to find out anything, because it was all such years and years and years ago. They looked at each other. Round about the time we were trying to investigate the Jane Finn business, said Tommy. They looked at each other again, their minds going back to the past. Moving house is often thought of as an agreeable exercise which the movers are going to enjoy, but it does not always turn out as expected. Every day has not only its appointed task, but there are usually anything between 4 and 12 callers, either long expected or those whose coming was quite forgotten. The Laurels, Tuppence said one day, during a break for tea. Silly name for a house, I think. I don't see why it's called the Laurels. It hasn't got any laurels. They could have called it the Plane Trees. Much better. Plane trees are very nice. Before the Laurels it was called Long Schofield, so they told me, said Tommy. Really, said Tuppence. I heard it was called Swallow's Nest. Yes, but that was further back, when the Parkinsons were here. You can't get away from the Parkinsons, said Tuppence. I mean, if I could find out something about the Parkinsons, we could get on with our problem. Our problem? Oh, you meant the problem of Mary Jordan. Well, it's not just that. There's the problem of the Parkinsons, and the problem of Mary Jordan, and there must be a lot of other problems too. Mary Jordan didn't die naturally. Then the next thing the message said was, it was one of us. Now, did that mean one of the Parkinson family, or did it mean just someone who lived in the house? Mary Jordan could have been a housemaid or a parlourmaid, or even the cook. And why should someone want her to die, and not die naturally? I mean, somebody must have wanted her to die, or else her death would have been natural, wouldn't it? Tuppence paused. I'm going to another coffee morning the day after tomorrow, she added. You seem to be always going to coffee mornings, observed Tommy. Well, it's a very good way of getting to know one's neighbours, and all the people who live in the same village. After all, it's not very big, this village, and people are always talking about their old aunts or people they knew. I shall try and start on Mrs. Griffin, who was evidently a great character in the neighbourhood. I wish, said Tommy desperately, oh, how I wish that we could forget all the Parkinsons. He sighed and departed. Tuppence came down the stairs slowly, shaking her head. Hannibal came up to her hopefully, wagging his tail and wriggling. No, Hannibal, said Tuppence, you've had your morning walk. Disappointed, Hannibal proceeded to bark loudly and make every pretence of being about to make a sharp snap at a tousled-haired girl who was wielding a hoover. He did not like the hoover, and he objected to Tuppence having a lengthy conversation with Beatrice. Oh, don't let him bite me, said Beatrice. "He won't bite you," said Tuppence. "He only pretends he's going to. By the way, do you know any family here, or anyone who lived here at one time called Jordan?" "Jordan, now? Well, I can't really say. One of the constables was a Johnson, and so was one of the postmen, George Johnson. He was a friend of mine." Beatrice giggled. "You never heard of a Mary Jordan who died?" Beatrice merely looked bewildered and shook her head. The following afternoon, Tuppence came out of the bookroom, brushing dust off her best coat and skirt. She had been asked out to tea by a new friend she had met at the White Elephant sale. "Can I speak to you a moment, ma'am?" said Beatrice. "Oh dear," said Tuppence, "problems." "Well, no, it's just about someone as you asked about. Name of Mary Jordan, that was right. Anyway, this friend of mine, Gwenda, says as she had heard of a Mary Jordan that lived here a long time ago, a very long time ago. Lived here, in this house, I mean." Tuppence looked interested. "Oh, lived in the Laurels." "Well, it wasn't called that then," said Beatrice. "And Gwenda had heard something about her, she said, and so she thought you might be interested. There was some rather sad story about her. She had an accident or something. Anyway, she died." "You mean that she was living in this house when she died? Was she one of the family?" "No, I think the family was called Parker, or Parkinson, something like that. I think Mary Jordan was just staying here. I believe Mrs. Griffin knows about it. Do you know Mrs. Griffin?" "Only very slightly," said Tuppence. "Matter of fact, that's where I'm going to tea this afternoon. I talked to her the other day at the sale. I hadn't met her before. She's a very old lady, older than she looks, but I think she's got a very good memory. She'll remember the Parkinsons. Gwenda says she's heard talk about one of the Parkinson boys." "What was his Christian name?" "Oh, it was Alec, I think. Some name like that. Alec or Alex," said Beatrice. "What happened to him? Did he grow up, go away, become a soldier or sailor or something like that?" "Oh, no. He died. Oh, yes, I think he's buried right here in the churchyard." "Well," said Tuppence, "that's very interesting. Poor little boy." "Oh, he wasn't very young. He was at school somewhere, I think. Must have been about 13 or 14. "Well," said Tuppence, "it's all very sad." She looked at her watch and said, "Oh dear, I'm very late now. I must hurry off." "I dare say Mrs. Griffin could tell you a few things, ma'am. I don't mean things as she'd remember herself, but she was brought up here as a child, and she'd heard a lot of things, and she tells people a lot sometimes about the families that were here before. Some of the things are real scandalous, too, goings on and all that." "Yes, well, thank you very much. I don't think I'd better put on a hat. I've got my hair awfully mussed now. Well, you put your head in that corner where the cobwebs is. I'll dust it off in case you do it again," said Beatrice helpfully. Tuppence ran down the stairs. "Alexander ran down there," she said to herself. "Many times, I expect. And he knew it was one of them. I wonder more than ever now." "I'm so very pleased that you and your husband have come here," said Mrs. Griffin as she poured out tea. "Sugar? Milk?" She pressed forward a dish of sandwiches, and Tuppence helped herself. "It makes so much difference, in the country if one has nice neighbours with whom one has something in common. Did you know this part of the world before?" "No," said Tuppence, "not at all." "Well," said Mrs. Griffin, "the Laurels is a charming house. I expect, though, you have had a great deal to do to it. Everyone has in turn." "I suppose a lot of different people have lived there," said Tuppence. "Oh, yes. Nobody seems to stay very long anywhere nowadays, do they? The Cuthbertsons were here, and the Redlands, and the Seymours, and after them the Joneses." "We wanted a little why it was called the Laurels," said Tuppence. "Oh, well, that was the kind of name people liked to give a house. Of course, if you go back far enough, probably to the time of the Parkinsons, I think there were Laurels, though I think the house was called something else in their day." "Yes," said Tuppence, There seem to have been a lot of Parkinsons here," she added, "but nobody seems able to tell one much about them." "Well, it was a long time ago, you see, dear, and after I think after the trouble, you know, and there was some feeling about it, and of course, one doesn't wonder they sold the place." "It had a bad reputation, did it?" said Tuppence, taking a chance. "Do you mean the house was supposed to be insanitary or something?" "Oh, no. Not the house. No, really, it was the people, you see. Well, of course, there was the disgrace, in a way. It was during the First War. Nobody could believe it. My grandmother used to talk about it, and say that it was something to do with naval secrets, about a new submarine. And there was a girl living with the Parkinsons who was said to have been mixed up with it all." "Was that Mary Jordan?" said Tuppence. "Yes," said Mrs. Griffin. "Yes, you're quite right. Though afterwards they suspected that that wasn't her real name. I think somebody had suspected her for some time. The boy, Alexander. Nice boy. Quite sharp, too." Tuppence was selecting birthday cards. It was a wet afternoon, and the post office was almost empty. Beatrice's friend, Gwenda, had been only too pleased to come to her assistance. She and Tuppence were already on friendly terms. "I'm so glad that the house has been opened again. Prince's Lodge, I mean." "I thought it had always been the Laurels," said Tuppence. "Oh, no, I don't think it was ever called that. Houses change names a lot around here. People do like giving new names to houses, you know." "Yes, they certainly seem to," said Tuppence thoughtfully. "By the way, Beatrice told me that you knew someone once living here called Mary Jordan." "I didn't know her, but I have heard her mentioned. In the war it was, not the last war, the one long before that when there used to be Zeppelins. Lovely golden hair she had, my grandmother said. German she was, one of those Frauleins, as they were called. Looked after children, a kind of nurse. She'd been with a naval family somewhere up in Scotland, I think, and afterwards she came down here. She used to have one day off a week, you know, and go to London, and that's where she used to take the things, whatever they were." "What sort of things?" said Tuppence. "I don't know. Nobody ever said much. Things she'd stolen, I expect." "Was she discovered stealing?" "Oh, no, I don't think so. They were beginning to suspect, but she got ill and died before that." "What did she die of? Did she die down here?" Gwenda shrugged. "Somebody told me it was a silly mistake the cook made. Some foxglove leaves were brought into the house by mistake for spinach. Foxglove has got something very deadly in it. The doctor came and did what he could, but I think it was too late." "Were there many people in the house when it happened?" "Oh, there was quite a lot, I should think. Yes, because there were always people staying, so I've heard, and children, you know, and weekenders, and a nursery maid, and a governess, I think, and parties. Mind you, I'm not knowing all about this myself. It's only what Granny used to tell me. The gardener at the time was blamed at first for sending the wrong leaves, but it wasn't him as did it. It was somebody who came out of the house and wanted to help him pick the vegetables in the garden and took them into the cook. Anyway, it was very sad, because Granny said that the Fraulein was a very good-looking girl with golden hair and all that, you know. And she used to go up to London every week. Naturally, she'd have to have a day off." "Yes," Gwenda agreed. "Said she had friends there. Foreigner she was. Granny says that there was some as said she was actually a German spy." "And was she?" "I shouldn't think so. The gentlemen liked her all right, apparently. You know, the naval officers, and the ones up at Shelton military camp, too. She had one or two friends there, you know." "That was when she was living here at the Laurels." "Wasn't called that then, but yes. She was living with the Parkinsons, or the Perkins, some name like that," said Gwenda. "What we call nowadays an au pair girl. She used to paint pictures. Did one of an old great-aunt of mine. Did one of the Parkinson boys. Old Mrs. Griffin's got it still. The Parkinson boy found out something about her, I believe. The one she painted the picture of, I mean." "Would that have been Alexander Parkinson?" "Yes, that's the one. The one who's buried near the church." On the following morning, Tuppence went in search of old Isaac. Isaac Bodlicott was one of the local characters. He was a character because of his age. He claimed to be 90, not generally believed, and he was able to do repairs of many curious kinds. His memories of past inhabitants of the neighbourhood seemed to be unlimited, although it was difficult to know how reliable they were. Mr. Bodleycourt was not one to shirk giving himself the pleasure of retailing some really good story of past days. These flights of fancy, claimed usually as flights of memory, were usually ushered in with the same type of statement. "You'd be surprised, you would, if I can tell you what I knew about that one." "Yes, indeed." "Well, you know, everybody thought they knew all about it, but they were wrong, absolutely wrong." A few days earlier, they had discovered that the skylight in the bathroom had been broken during the night. Having persuaded Mr. Bodleycourt to replace the broken glass, Tuppence wondered if she could direct his conversation to any memory of the past which would be useful in solving the mystery of Mary Jordan. "I suppose," said Tuppence, as old Isaac gazed thoughtfully at the bathroom ceiling, "that you must know a lot about all the various people and the extraordinary things that have happened in this place in the past." Well, I'm not as young as I was, you know. Over 85 I am. Going on 90. I've always had a good memory. The things I could tell you, you wouldn't believe." "Yes, it's wonderful to think how much you must know about a lot of extraordinary people," said Tuppence. "Spies, I suppose, sometimes. Or criminals." She looked at him helpfully. Old Isaac bent and picked up a splinter of glass. "There," he said. "How do you feel if that got in your foot?" Tuppence began to feel that the replenishing of a glass skylight was not going to prompt many of Isaac's more exciting memories of the past. She had noticed that the small so-called greenhouse attached to the wall of the house near the dining room window was also in need of repair, and Isaac was quite pleased to transfer himself to this fresh problem. They went downstairs and walked round the side of the house. "Ah, you mean that there, do you?" Tuppence said yes, she did mean that there. "KK," said Isaac. Tuppence looked at him. 2 letters of the alphabet such as KK really meant nothing to her. "What did you say?" "I said KK. That's what it used to be called in old Mrs. Lottie Jones's time. That's 'cause it wasn't grand. Bigger houses have a real conservatory, you know, where they'd have maidenhair ferns in pots." "Yes," said Tuppence, her own memories going back easily to such things. "And a greenhouse you can call it too. But this here, KK, old Mrs. Lottie Jones used to call it. I don't know why." "Did they have maidenhair ferns in it?" "No, it wasn't used for that. No, the children had it for toys mostly. They used to bring the broken toys or chairs out here, things like that. But then, you see, they already had the rocking horse there, and True Love in the far corner." "How do you spell it?" asked Tuppence. "How do you spell what?" "KK. Is it just 2 letters?" "No, I think it was something different. I think it was 2 foreign words. I seem to remember now, KAI, and then another KAI. KK, or Kai Kai almost, they used to say it. I think it was a Japanese word." "I'd like to see inside KK," said Tuppence hopefully. The application of a little oil had a wonderful effect on a rusty key which old Isaac produced from a shed. KK's door opened with a grinding noise, and Tuppence and her guide went in. "There you are," said Isaac, not displaying any particular pride in the objects within. "Nothing but old rubbish." "That's a rather wonderful-looking rocking horse," said Tuppence. "That's Matilde, that is," said Isaac. "Come from America, it did. American godfather brought it to one of the Bassington children, before the other lot. I suppose it's all rusted up now." Matilde was a rather splendid-looking horse, even in decay, though only a few hairs were left of what must once have been a prolific mane, and 1 ear was broken off. Matilde had once been painted grey. "It doesn't work like any rocking horse I've ever seen before," said Tuppence, interested. "No, it don't do it," said Isaac. "You know, they go up and down, back to front. But this one here, you see, it sort of springs forwards. First the front legs do it, whoop, and then the back legs do it. It's a very good action. Oh, they love that, you know. Miss Jenny used to ride it day after day." "Who was Miss Jenny?" "Why, she was the eldest one, you know. She was the one that had the godfather as sent her this. Sent her true love, too," he added. Tuppence looked at him inquiringly. The remark did not seem to apply to any of the other contents of KK. "That's what they call it. That little horse and cart what's there in the corner. Used to ride it down the hill, Miss Pamela did. She'd get in at the top of the hill, and she'd put her feet on there. You see, it's meant to have pedals, but they don't work. So she'd take it to the top of the hill, and then she'd let it begin to go down the hill, and she'd put the brakes on, as it were, with her feet. Often she'd end up landing in the monkey puzzle, as a matter of fact." "Well," said Tuppence, "it's all very interesting, I'm sure." She paused. "Did you ever know a Mary Jordan?" Old Isaac nodded. "Ah, I know who you mean. No, she was before my time a bit, I think. You mean the German spy girl, don't you?" "Everyone seems to know about her here," said Tuppence. "Yes. They called her the Fraulein or something. Sounds like a railway." He laughed. "Now it's about time you thought of putting some vegetables in, isn't it?" "Yes," Tuppence agreed. "I suppose you've done a lot of gardening work round here. I don't mean just this house, but a lot of places." "Oh, yes, I've done odd jobbing, you know. I used to come along to most of the houses. Some of the gardeners they had weren't any good at all, and I'd usually come in and help at certain times or other. There was a bit of an accident here once, you know. Mistake about vegetables. Before my time, but I heard about it." "Something about foxglove leaves, wasn't it?" said Tuppence. "Oh, fancy you haven't heard of that already. That was a long time ago, too. Yes, several was taken ill with it. One of them died, at least so I heard. Old pal of mine told me that." "I think it was the Fraulein," said Tuppence. "What? The Fraulein has died? I never heard that." "Well, perhaps I'm wrong," said Tuppence. "Now supposing you take true love, or whatever this thing's called, and put it on the hill in the place where that child, Pamela, used to take it down the hill, if the hill is still there." "Well, of course the hill is still there," said old Isaac. "It's all grass still, but be careful now. I don't know how much of true love is rusted away. I'll have a bit of a clean-up on it first, so it won't break down under you. It's very old, but you'd be surprised the way some old things work." "What on earth?" said Tommy. He was used to finding Tuppence in unlikely spots when he returned to the house, but on this occasion he was more startled than usual. "Hello, Tommy," said Tuppence. "You're back a bit earlier than I thought you would be." "What is that thing?" "True love," said Tuppence. "Are you trying to go for a ride on it? It's much too small for you." "Well, of course it is," Tuppence smiled. "It's a child's sort of thing. What you had, I suppose, before you had fairy cycles, or whatever one had in your youth." "It doesn't really go, does it?" asked Tommy. "Well, not exactly," said Tuppence. "But you see, you take it up to the top of the hill, and then its wheels turn of their own accord, you see, and because of the hill, you go down." "And crash at the bottom, I suppose?" "Not at all," said Tuppence. "You break it with your feet." "Oh, well," said Tommy. "Everyone to their own kind of amusement. I was just doing a little investigation, you know, of our latest problem." "Whose problem?" asked Tommy warily. "I don't know," said Tuppence. "Both our problems, I hope. It's just that I wondered what other things there might be hidden in this house, so I went and looked at a lot of toys that seemed to have been shoved away in a sort of strange old greenhouse, probably years and years ago, and there was this creature, and there was Mathilde, which is a rocking horse with a hole in its stomach." "A hole in its stomach?" "Well, yes. People, I suppose, used to shove things in there. Children, for fun. You know, things like old leaves and dirty papers, and bits of strange dusters and flannel, oily stuff that had been used to clean things with." Said Tommy. "Come on, let's go indoors." "Well, Tommy," said Tuppence, as she stretched out her feet to a pleasant wood fire which she had lit already for his return in the drawing-room, "let's have your news. Did you go to the gallery to see the show?" "No," As a matter of fact, I hadn't time, really. What do you mean you hadn't time? I thought that's what you went for. I went to London, said Tommy, and put certain things in motion about the mystery, or the problem, of Mary Jordan. Such a very ordinary name, too. Couldn't have been her right name if she was German, said Tuppence. And she was said to be a German spy or something like that. But she could have been English, I suppose. I think the German story is just a kind of legend, said Tommy. Tuppence looked at him eagerly. Do go on. You've been making inquiries. Who did you go to ask your questions? Well, it's not quite like that. There are people you pay a certain sum to, and they do the research for you from the proper quarters, so that what you get is quite authentic. The lady I use is called Miss Collardon. I see. And did your Miss Collardon find out anything? Not as quickly as this. She has to do the research, find the people who know things, then one can look them up, ask a few questions, renew old friendships. Things do depend a bit on who you know. Yes, said Tuppence, that's quite true. I know that myself from experience. Our methods aren't the same, said Tommy. I think yours are just as good as mine. You have a kind of feeling for success. It seems to happen to you. Well, some day we shall know all about everything here, Tuppence said stoutly. Only it's all such years and years ago. I just can't believe somehow in the idea of something really important being hidden round here, or owned by someone here, or something to do with this house, or people who once lived in it being important. But if Mary Jordan did not die naturally, she must have been killed for a reason. Oh well. I see what we shall have to do next. What? Said Tommy. Believe 6 impossible things before breakfast, of course, said Tuppence. 6 impossible things before breakfast, indeed. Tuppence drained a cup of coffee and considered what to do next. She put on her thick shoes and a pullover, and went out into the garden, and made her way to the mysteriously named KK. KK looked in just the same mess as before. Mathilde was still looking forlorn and forsaken, but 2 more things attracted Tuppence's attention. They were porcelain stools, with the figures of white swans curled round them. One stool was dark blue, and the other stool was pale blue. Of course, said Tuppence. I've seen things like that on the veranda when I was young. We used to call them Oxford and Cambridge. I think I'll get Isaac to take those 2 stools out of here and give them a good wash, and then we can enjoy them when the good weather comes. She turned and started to run towards the door. Her foot caught in Mathilde's rocker. Oh dear, said Tuppence. Now what have I done? Her foot had knocked the dark blue porcelain stool, and it rolled down onto the floor and smashed in 2 pieces. Oh dear, said Tuppence. Now I've really killed Oxford, I suppose. We shall have to make do with Cambridge. I don't think you could stick Oxford together again. The pieces are too difficult. She sighed, and wondered what Tommy was doing. Tommy was sitting exchanging memories with some old friends. World's in a funny way nowadays, said Colonel Atkinson. I hear you and Tuppence have gone to live in the country, somewhere down near Hollowquay. I wonder what took you there. Anything particular? Well, we found this house fairly cheap, said Tommy. Ah, well, that's lucky always, isn't it? What's the name? You must give me your address. Well, we think we may call it Cedar Lodge, because there's a very nice cedar there. Its original name was the Laurels, but that's rather a Victorian hangover, isn't it? The Laurels, Hollowquay. My word. What are you up to, eh? Tommy looked at the elderly face with the sprouting white moustache. "Onto something, are you?" said Colonel Atkinson. "Are you employed in the service of your country again?" "Oh, I'm too old for that," said Tommy. "I'm retired from all that sort of stuff." "Ah, I wonder now. Perhaps that's just the thing you say. Perhaps you've been told to say that. After all, you know, there's a good deal was never found out about all that business." "What business?" said Tommy. "The Cardington scandal. You know, came after that other thing, the what-you-call-'em letters, and the Emlyn Johnson submarine business." "Oh," said Tommy. "I seem to remember something vaguely. There were those letters, you see, gave the whole show away politically. Yes, letters. If they'd been able to get hold of them, it would have made a big difference. It would have drawn attention to several people who, at the time, were the most highly trusted people in the government. Astonishing how these things happen, isn't it? You know, the traitors in one's midst, always highly trusted, always splendid fellows, always the last people to be suspected, and all the time, well, a lot of all that never came to light. The Colonel winked. Perhaps you've been sent down there to have a look round, eh, my boy? A look round at what? Said Tommy. Well, this house of yours, the Laurels. They had a good look round, the security people and the rest of them. They thought that valuable evidence of some kind was hidden somewhere in that house. Come now, Tommy, my boy, I feel you're on the hunt again. Nonsense, said Tommy. You mustn't get all these ideas in your head. I'm an old gaffer now. You're a cunning old dog, exclaimed the Colonel. I bet you're better than some of these young ones. Yes, you sit there looking innocent, and really I expect... Well, one mustn't ask you to betray state secrets. But I know you, Beresford, and I know our Mrs. Beresford. The two of you together, you're a wonderful couple, and I bet you'll come up with something. I tell you, if those papers ever come to light, it'll have a very, very great effect on the political front, and there are several people who won't be pleased. No, indeed. And those people who won't be pleased are looked on as pillars of rectitude at the moment, but by some they are thought to be dangerous. Remember that. They're dangerous, and the ones that aren't dangerous are in contact with those who are dangerous. So you be careful, and make your missus be careful too. On his way home, Tommy stared out of the railway carriage window and watched the rapidly retreating countryside. I wonder, he said to himself, that old boy, he's usually in the know. But what can there be that couldn't matter now? It's all in the past. I mean, there's nothing, can't be anything left from that war. Not nowadays. Then he wondered. New ideas had taken over, common market ideas. England was in a funny state at present, and there were always grandsons and nephews, new generations, younger members of families that had always meant something, that had pull, that had positions of influence, of power, because they were born who they were, and if by any chance they were not loyal, they could be approached, could believe in new creeds, or in old creeds revived, whichever way you like to think of it. Well, said Tuppence, as they left the dinner table that night and went into the other room to drink coffee. Was it fun or not fun? How were all the old boys? Oh, very much the old boys, said Tommy. I see, Tuppence. What do you think of this place, really? Do you mean the house? No, I didn't mean the house. I think I mean Hollowquay. Well, I think it's a nice place. It's nice because it's a place where things don't happen. Though I must say, something nearly happened today. What do you mean by nearly happened? I mean that pane of glass at the top of the greenhouse. It was trembling a bit the other day, had the twitches. Well, it practically came down on my head. Might have cut me to bits, Tuppence said dramatically. We'll have to get Isaac to look at all the panes. We don't want you being done in, Tuppence. Well, I suppose when you buy an old house, there's always something wrong with it. Tommy looked at her. Do you think there's something wrong with this house, Tuppence? What on earth do you mean by wrong with this house? Well, because I heard something rather odd about it today. You look peculiar, Tommy, said Tuppence. What is it? Well, it was old Mustachio Monty, you know. Tuppence, what would you think if I said that he suggested or hinted, whatever way you like, that we were here not as old retired has-beens, but as people on active service to find something? To find something? What sort of thing? Tuppence asked, puzzled. Something that might be hidden in this house. What could there be to find in this house? Something that I suppose was once hidden here. Something that would be dangerous to someone. Well, that's very odd, said Tuppence. Why? Have you found something? No, of course I haven't found anything. But it seems there was a scandal about this place donkeys years ago, and Mary Jordan was mixed up in it. It was all very hush-hush. Are you imagining things, Tuppence? No, I'm not. What did Monty actually say? Letters or papers of some kind, said Tommy. Something that would have created some great political upheaval of some kind. Someone in a position of power, and who oughtn't to have been in a position of power, and there were letters or papers, or something that would definitely cook his goose if they ever came to light. All sorts of intrigues, and all happening years ago. In the time of Mary Jordan. It sounds very unlikely, said Tuppence, but I suppose we might as well have a look around as we're living here. I don't think anything could remain undiscovered here, said Tommy, not with gardeners and people, tearing up the place, and different families living here, and house agents and everything. Do you think, said Tuppence, with a voice that was more hopeful than despondent, that somebody was trying to put an end to me, and loosen the glass skylight in the conservatory so that it would fall on me? Most unlikely, said Tommy. It was probably meant to fall on old Isaac. That's a disappointing thought, said Tuppence. I would like to feel that I had had a great escape. And there was the mysterious smashing of the bathroom skylight. Perhaps somebody's trying to scare us off. Well, you better be careful of yourself. I shall be careful of you too. Nobody tried to shoot you in the train, or derail it or anything, did they? Said Tuppence. No, said Tommy. But we better look at the car brakes before we go out driving next time. Of course this is all completely ridiculous, he added. Of course it is, said Tuppence. Absolutely ridiculous. All the same. All the same what? Well, it's sort of fun just to think of things like that. You mean Alexander was killed because he knew something? Asked Tommy, following his wife's train of thought with the ease of long practice. Yes, he knew something about who killed Mary Jordan. It was one of us. Tuppence's face lit up. Us, she said with emphasis. We'll have to find out all about us. An us here in this house in the past. It's a crime we've got to solve. Go back to the past to solve it, to where it happened and why it happened. That's the thing we've never tried to do before. Where on earth have you been, Tuppence? Demanded her husband when he returned home the following day. Well, last of all, I've been in the cellar, said Tuppence. I can see that, said Tommy. Do you know that your hair is absolutely full of cobwebs? Well, one has to start somewhere, said Tuppence. It's just possible, if what Colonel Atkinson said to you was true, that something could be hidden in this house, though it's rather difficult to imagine where it could be, or what it could be. Then why did somebody want to injure you or injure me or try to get us to leave this house? Unless, there was something here that they didn't want us to find. Well, that's all your idea, said Tuppence. It mightn't be true at all. Anyway, it's not been an entirely wasted day. I have found some things. Anything to do with Mary Jordan? Not particularly. Tuppence looked a little disappointed. The cellar isn't much good. No flagstones that looked as though you could pull them up and find anything underneath. There were a few decayed trunks that'd fall to bits if you kicked them. No, it was a washout. Well, I'm sorry, said Tommy. So no satisfaction at all. Well, there were some things that were interesting. I said to myself, now if I was going to hide anything in this house that I didn't want anyone else to find, what sort of place would I choose? Well, one of them, of course, is books. People hide things in books. And we haven't quite finished doing the book room upstairs, have we? I thought we had, said Tommy hopefully. Not really. There was the bottom shelf still. So I went up there and looked through the bottom shelf. Most of it was sermons, written by a Methodist minister, I think. Anyway, they weren't interesting, there was nothing in them. So I pulled all those books out on the floor. And then I did make a discovery. Somebody had made a sort of gaping hole underneath, and pushed all sorts of things in it. Papers, books, more or less torn to pieces. There was one rather big one. It had a brown paper cover on it, and I just pulled it out to see. After all, one never knows, does one? And what do you think it was? I've no idea. First edition of Robinson Crusoe, something valuable like that? No, it was a birthday book. A birthday book. What's that? Well, they used to have them to write down people's birthdays. This one goes back a long time, back to the Parkinsons, I think. Anyway, it was rather battered and torn. Not worth keeping, and I don't suppose anyone would have bothered about it. I haven't gone through it properly yet, but it does date back and one might find something in it. Interesting names, perhaps. I suppose so, said Tommy, sounding sceptical. Well, that's one thing. That's the only thing in the book line that I came across. There was nothing else on the bottom shelf. The other thing to look through, of course, is the cupboards. And I found something there, too. What was that? China menu cards. China menu cards? Yes, in that old cupboard we haven't been able to get into, the one off the larder. Well, I found the key in an old box, out in KK as a matter of fact. I put some oil on it, and I managed to get the cupboard door open. And, well, there was nothing much inside. It was just a dirty cupboard with a few broken bits of china left in it. I should think from the last people who were here. But shoved up on the top shelf, there was a little heap of the Victorian china menus people used to have at parties. And what do you hope to get from all these discoveries? Tommy asked doubtfully. Well, the only thing with possibilities is the birthday book. In it I see there's a mention of somebody called Winifred Morrison. Well, Winifred Morrison, I gather, was old Mrs. Griffin's maiden name. That's the one I went to tea with the other day. She's one of the oldest inhabitants, you know, and she remembers a lot, and she knows about a lot of things that happened before her time. Well, I think she might remember or have heard of some of the other names in the birthday book. We might get something from that. We might, said Tommy, still sounding doubtful. But don't you think we'd better give this business up altogether? Why should we want to know who killed Mary Jordan? Don't you want to? No, I don't, said Tommy. At least... No, I give in. You've got me involved now, I admit. Haven't you found out anything? Asked Tuppence. I hadn't time today, but I've got a few more sources of information. I put that woman I told you about, you know, the one that's quite clever about research, I put her onto a few things. Good, said Tuppence. We'll still hope for the best. It's all nonsense, but perhaps it is rather fun. I wonder what Tuppence is doing now, said Tommy, sighing. Excuse me, I didn't quite hear what you said. Tommy turned his head to look at Miss Collardon more closely. Miss Collardon was thin, almost emaciated, and had grey hair which was slowly passing through the stage of recovering from a peroxide rinse designated to make her look younger, which it had not done. She was now trying various shades of artistic grey, cloudy smoke, steel blue, and other interesting tints suitable for a lady between 60 and 65, devoted to the pursuit of research. "Oh, it's nothing really, Miss Collardon," said Tommy. Just something I was considering, you know." "And what is it, I wonder?" thought Tommy, being careful this time not to utter the words aloud, "that she can be doing today? Something silly, I bet, or highly dangerous. Yes, dangerous." It was always difficult keeping Tuppence out of danger. His mind roved vaguely over various incidents in the past. Some words came into his mind, and he spoke them aloud. "Postern of fate. Pass not beneath, O caravan, or pass not singing. Have you heard that silence where the birds are dead, yet something pipeth like a bird?" Miss Collardon responded immediately, giving Tommy quite a shock. "Flecker," she said. "Flecker. It goes on, Death's caravan, disaster's cavern, fort of fear." Tommy stared at her, then realized that Miss Collardon had thought he was bringing her a poetic problem to be researched. He said hurriedly, "Have you had any success with that inquiry I spoke to you about the day before yesterday?" "Oh, yes. Not very much trouble in that. Somerset House is very useful, you know, in all those things. I don't think that there is likely to be anything particular that you want there, but I've got the names and addresses of certain births, marriages, and deaths." "All Mary Jordans?" asked Tommy. "Jordan, yes. A Mary, a Maria, and a Polly Jordan. Also a Molly Jordan. I don't know if any of them are likely to be what you want. Can I pass this to you?" Miss Collardon handed him a small typewritten sheet. "Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Any more queries?" "Yes, I've got a list here of about 6. Some of them may not be in your line." "Oh, well," said Miss Collardon with complete assurance. "I have to make things my line, you know. It's not just the finding out, it's finding out just where you can find out, if that isn't a rather foolish way of speech. Oh, yes, I cover a very wide field." "I'm sure you do," said Tommy. Tommy's next appointment was at an inexpensive restaurant in the neighbourhood of Tottenham Court Road. "Well, I never," said an elderly man, leaping up from his seat where he was waiting. "Carroty Tom, on my life. Shouldn't have known you." "Possibly not," said Tommy. "Not much carrots left about me. It's grey-haired Tom." "Ah, well, we're all that. Well, what are you doing these days, old boy? Still in the espionage, do?" "No," said Tommy. "I'm nothing to do with espionage." "Dear me, what a waste of your activities." "And what about you, mutton chop?" "Oh, I'm much too old to serve my country in that way. By the way, where are you now? I sent you a Christmas card. Well, I didn't actually post it till January, but anyway, it came back to me with 'not known at this address.'" "No, we've gone to the country to live now. Down near the sea. Hollowquay." "Hollowquay? I seem to remember something. Something in your line going on there once, wasn't there?" "Not in my time," said Tommy. "I only just got to hear of it since going to live there. Legends of the past, at least 60 years ago. Something to do with a submarine, wasn't it? Plans of a submarine sold to someone or other?" "I wanted to ask you a few things about that, mutton chop." "Oh? Ask away." "Was it really something to do with spying of some kind?" "Well, to tell you the truth, old boy, it's so long ago that I can't remember much about it, though it made a big stir at the time. You know, splendid young naval officer, absolutely above suspicion in every way, 90% British, rated about 105 in reliability, but nothing of the kind really. In the pay of... well, I can't remember now who he was in the pay of. Germany, I suppose, before the 1914 war. Yes, I think that was it." "And there was a woman, too, I believe, associated with it all," said Tommy. "I seem to remember hearing something about, Mary Jordan, I think it was. Mind you, I'm not clear about all this. Getting old, you know. Not that I mind. Always got time to talk to old friends, usually about other old friends. And then you find either they are dead, which surprises you enormously because you didn't think they would be, or else they're not dead, and that surprises you even more. It's a very difficult world." In the afternoon, Tommy had another interview arranged, this time with a sad, grizzled man sitting in an office, and obviously grudging the time he was giving Tommy. "Well, I really couldn't say." The grizzled man shook his head. "Of course, I know roughly what you're talking about, but I really have no information about that sort of thing, you know." He paused, then said, "Well, I've just got one thing might help. Here's an address for you. I've made an appointment too. Nice chap. Knows everything. He's the tops, you know. Absolutely the tops. Ever met him?" "I don't think so," said Tommy, looking at the card and the address. "No." "Well, to look at him, you wouldn't think he knew anything. Big, you know. And yellow." "Oh," said Tommy. "Big and yellow." "He's the tops, though," said Tommy's grizzled friend. "The absolute tops. You go along there. He'll be able to tell you something anyway. Good luck, old chap." Tommy, having successfully got himself to the city office in question, was received by a man of 35 to 40 years of age, who looked at him with the eye of one determined to do the worst without delay. Tommy felt that he was suspected of many things, possibly carrying a bomb in some deceptive container, or prepared to hijack or kidnap anyone, or to hold up with a revolver the entire staff. It made Tommy extremely nervous. "You have an appointment with Mr. Robinson?" "At what time did you say?" "Ah, 3:45. He consulted a ledger. "Mr. Thomas Beresford, is that right?" "Yes," said Tommy. "Ah, just sign your name here, please." Tommy signed his name where he was told. "Johnson?" A nervous-looking young man of about 23 seemed like an apparition rising out of a glass-partitioned desk. "Yes, sir?" "Take Mr. Beresford up to the 4th floor to Mr. Robinson's office." "Yes, sir." He led Tommy to a lift, the kind of lift that always seemed to have its own idea of how it should deal with those who came into it. The doors rolled open. Tommy passed in. The doors very nearly pinched him in doing so, and just managed to slam themselves shut about an inch from his spine. "Cold afternoon," said Johnson, showing a friendly attitude to someone who was clearly being allowed to approach the high one in the highest. "Yes," said Tommy. "It always seems cold in the afternoons. Some say it's pollution, some say it's all the natural gas they're taking out of the North Sea," said Johnson. "Oh, I haven't heard that," said Tommy. "Doesn't seem likely to me," said Johnson. They passed the second floor and the third floor, and finally arrived at the fourth floor. Johnson led Tommy, again escaping the closing doors by a mere inch, along a passage to a door. He knocked, was told to enter, held the door open, insinuated Tommy across the threshold, and said, "Mr. Beresford, sir, by appointment." He went out and shut the door behind him. Tommy advanced. The room seemed to be mainly filled by an enormous desk. Behind the desk sat a rather enormous man, a man of great weight and many inches. He had, as Tommy had been prepared for by his friend, a very large and yellow face. What nationality he was, Tommy had no idea. He might have been anything. Tommy had a feeling he was probably foreign, or else he might be very decidedly English. "Ah, Mr. Beresford." Mr. Robinson got up, shook hands. "There's something you want to know about, I gather." "Why, yes," said Tommy. "I don't suppose it's anything of any importance. It was just an idea." "Partly my wife's idea." "I've heard about your wife. I've heard about you, too. So, what are you up against now?" "Well," said Tommy, "briefly, my wife and I went into a new house, and there were some books that the people moving out wanted to sell. A lot of children's books, all sorts of things. And in one book my wife was reading, we found certain letters underlined. Those letters made a sentence when you put them together, and— This sounds awfully silly, what I'm going to say next." "Well, that's hopeful," said Mr. Robinson. "If a thing sounds silly, I always want to hear about it." "It said, Mary Jordan did not die naturally. It must have been one of us." "Very, very interesting," said Mr. Robinson. "It said that, did it? Mary Jordan did not die a natural death. And who was it who wrote it? Any clue of that?" "Apparently a schoolboy, Alexander Parkinson. The family lived in my house. Alexander's buried in the churchyard. And we're very keen to learn who Mary Jordan was." "Because she didn't die a natural death? Yes, I see. And what did you find out about her?" "Absolutely nothing," said Tommy. "Nobody seems to remember her there much, or say anything about her. It's all very difficult." "And she died? What did she die of?" Tommy shrugged. "It seems that somebody brought a few foxglove leaves in with some spinach from the garden by accident, and they ate it. Mind you, that probably wouldn't kill you." "No," said Mr. Robinson, "not enough of it. But if you then put a strong dose of digitalin alkaloid in the coffee, and just made sure that Mary Jordan got it in her coffee, or in a cocktail earlier, then, as you say, the foxglove leaves would be blamed, and it would all be taken to be an accident. But your Alexander was too sharp for that and had other ideas. Anything else, Beresford?" "Well, there were rumours that she was a German spy," said Tommy. Mr. Robinson nodded. "I remember the case. Made a big sensation. Any German working in England before 1914 was always said to be a spy. The English officer involved was said to be above suspicion. I always look very hard at anyone who is above suspicion. It's all a long time ago." "Yes, and it's all rather sketchy," Tommy agreed. "Yes, it would be by now. It's always been associated, of course, with the submarine secrets that were stolen around then, and that's what caught the public interest, as you might say. But there were other things too, you know. There was the political side to it. A lot of our prominent politicians were mentioned. You know, the sort of chaps people say, well, he has real integrity. Real integrity is just as dangerous as being above suspicion in the services. Then there was that chap just before the last war lived in your village, cottage on the beach. Made a lot of disciples, you know, praising Hitler. Blew the fascist trumpet without calling it fascism. All sorts of things going on." Mr. Robinson paused. "Interesting that you should come across it too." "The trouble is," said Tommy, that I don't really know. I mean, we bought this house to live in. It's the sort of house we wanted. We've done it up in the way we want, and we're trying to get the garden in some kind of shape. And all this other business is just pure curiosity on our part. Something that happened long ago, and you can't help thinking about it, or wanting to know why. There's no point in it. It's not going to do anybody any good. I know. You just want to know. Well, that's the way the human being is made. That's what leads us to explore things, to go and fly to the moon, to bother about underwater discoveries, to find natural gas in the North Sea. I don't want to make a fool of myself, said Tommy. I don't want to mix myself up with a lot of things which have nothing to do with me. Mr. Robinson looked at him with a twinkle in his eye. Got to try and find out things just to satisfy your wife, I suppose. Yes, I've heard of her. I've never had the pleasure of meeting her, I don't think. Rather wonderful person, isn't she? I think so, said Tommy. That's good hearing. I like people who stick together and enjoy their marriage and go on enjoying it. And you see, said Tommy, we're not trying to butt into anything. We just... I know, said Mr. Robinson. Your friend sent you to me because he knew that I'm interested in anything like that. I started quite early, you know, poking about, finding out things. And now, said Tommy, now you're the tops. Now who told you that? Said Mr. Robinson. All nonsense. I don't think it is, said Tommy. Well, said Mr. Robinson, some get to the tops, and some have the tops forced upon them. I would say the latter applies to me, more or less. I've had a few things of surpassing interest forced upon me. I don't know what I can suggest to you, though. It's a question of listening to people, and finding out what you can about bygone years. If anything comes along that you think might be interesting to me, just give me a ring or something. We'll find some code words, you know, just to make ourselves feel excited again, feel as though we really mattered. Crab apple jelly. How would that be? You know, you say your wife's made some jars of crab-apple jelly and would I like a pot? I'll know what you mean. That I would have found out something about Mary Jordan, Tommy suggested. He hesitated. Is there really any point in going on with that? After all, she's dead. Yes, she's dead. But, well, you see, sometimes one has the wrong ideas about people because of what you've been told, or because of what's been written. You mean we have wrong ideas about Mary Jordan? You mean she wasn't important at all? Oh, yes, she could have been very important. Mr. Robinson looked at his watch. I have to push you off now. There's a chap coming in 10 minutes. An awful bore, but he's high up in government circles, and you know what life is nowadays. Go on searching. Who knows? You might find out something. I can't tell you anything more about it at the moment. I know some of the facts that probably no one else can tell you, and in due course I might be able to tell them to you. I'll tell you one thing that might help you in your investigations. You read about the trial of the young naval commander who lived in your village and was tried for espionage, did a sentence for it, and richly deserved it. He was a traitor to his country, and that's that. But Mary Jordan. Yes. You want to know something about Mary Jordan. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Mary Jordan was, well, you can call it a spy. But she wasn't a German spy. Mr. Robinson dropped his voice and leaned forward over his desk. She was one of our lot. But that alters everything, said Tuppence. Yes, said Tommy. Yes, it was quite a shock. It makes everything wrong, too, doesn't it? Said Tuppence. I mean, we found this thing in the Black Arrow, and it was all clear enough. One of the family, or somebody in the house or something, had arranged to bring about the death of Mary Jordan, and we didn't know who Mary Jordan was, which was very baffling. Then you found out she had apparently been a German spy, said Tommy. Only now we know that it wasn't true. She was in the English security, whatever it was called, and she came here in some capacity to find out about that young naval commander, the one who sold the secret of the submarine or something like that. So she was pretending to spy for Germany, said Tuppence, and she made friends with the naval commander. There was also, said Tommy, another enemy agent living down here, but that was just before the Second War. He lived in a cottage somewhere, down near the quay I think it was, and he wrote a lot of propaganda, and used to say that really our best plan would be to join in with Germany and get together with them, and things like that. It's all so confusing, said Tuppence. Not really, said Tommy. I don't think so. Why don't you think so? Well, because if Mary Jordan was here to find out something, and if she did find out something, then perhaps when they, I mean the naval commander or other people, there must have been other people too in it, when they found out that she'd found something, well then they had to silence her, said Tuppence, before she could report what she'd found out. There must be a little more to it than that, said Tommy thoughtfully. Perhaps she'd got hold of something important, some kind of papers or written document, letters that might have been sent or passed to someone. Yes, I see what you mean. But if Mary Jordan died because of a mistake that had been made about vegetables, then I don't see quite why Alexander called it one of us, one of his family. It could have been like this, said Tommy. It needn't have been someone actually in the house. It's very easy to pick wrong leaves that look alike, bunch them all up together and take them into the kitchen. Nobody would think it had been done on purpose. But then everybody at that meal would have died, said Tuppence. Or everybody would have been ill but not died. Not necessarily, said Tommy. The point is, everyone gets a mild dose by what is clearly a mistake, so everyone gets mildly ill. But one person dies. And it would pass off as being due to the mistake, and they wouldn't have looked to see or even suspected that there was some other way in which it happened. In that case, said Tuppence, perhaps there's something still here in the house that would explain what happened to me today, and yesterday too. What happened to you yesterday, Tuppence? The wheels came off Truelove, that beastly little cart and horse I was going down the hill in the other day, and so I came a terrible cropper right down behind the monkey puzzle and into it, and I very nearly, well, I might have had a serious accident. That silly old man Isaac ought to have seen that the thing was safe. He said he did look at it. He told me it was quite all right before I started. And it wasn't. No. He said afterwards that he thought someone had been playing about with it, tampering with the wheels or something, so that they came off. Tuppence, said Tommy, do you think that's the second or third thing that's happened deliberately? I meant to tell you, a sort of metal statue thing nearly came down on the top of me in the bookroom the other day. It might have been chance, but... You mean somebody wants to get rid of us? But that would mean, said Tommy, that there must be something that's here, in the house. Tommy looked at Tuppence, and Tuppence looked at Tommy. It was the moment for consideration. Tuppence spoke at last. You mean that I'm stirring up things that somebody doesn't want to be stirred up? That sort of thing, said Tommy. I mean, if we suddenly were meant to feel that we didn't like living here, and put the house up for sale and went away, that would be quite all right. They'd be satisfied with that. Who do you mean by they? I've no idea, said Tommy. We must get to they later. Just they. There's we and there's they. We must keep them apart in our minds. Tuppence nodded vigorously. Yes. It's what I said just now, that this turns things upside down. I mean, now we know that Mary Jordan wasn't an enemy agent, but a British agent. She was here for a purpose. Perhaps she had accomplished her purpose, and she reported what she had found out. And perhaps someone opened the letter, said Tuppence. What letter? Said Tommy. The letter she wrote to whoever was her contact. I think the house might have something to do with it, said Tommy. There may be something that was hidden here, hidden perhaps by Mary Jordan, hidden in a place ready to deliver to someone who would come for them, or deliver them by going herself to London or somewhere on some excuse. You're not saying it's still hidden in this house? Tuppence cried excitedly. No, said Tommy. I shouldn't have thought so. But one doesn't know, and if it is, somebody is afraid we may find it, or have found it, or they want to get hold of whatever it is they think we've found. but that they've never found, though perhaps they've looked for it in past years, and then thought it had been hidden somewhere else outside." "Oh, Tommy," cried Tuppence, "that makes it all much more exciting, doesn't it?" "Oh, Tuppence," said Tommy, "just when we were looking forward to a delightful, peaceful old age." "No peace for the pensioners," said Tuppence gaily. "That's an idea too." "What?" "I must go and talk to some old-age pensioners at their club. I hadn't thought of them up to now." "For goodness' sake, look after yourself," said Tommy. "I think I'd better stay at home and keep an eye on you. I've got to do some more research in London tomorrow." "I'm going to do some research here," said Tuppence. "I hope," said Tuppence, "that I'm not interrupting you, coming along like this." "Oh, I'm delighted to see you, Mrs. Beresford," said Mrs. Griffin. Mrs. Griffin, as Tuppence knew very well from her various sources of information, which consisted of Daily Women, Old Isaac, Gwenda in the Post Office and sundry others, was 94. "What have you been doing with yourself lately?" inquired Mrs. Griffin. "Oh, I've been turning out things, you know," said Tuppence. "A lot of old bookshelves and things like that. Anyway, I got down to the last shelf, and I found a sort of hole, and I scooped up a lot of old things out of that, mostly torn books, and among it there was this." She produced her parcel, wrapped loosely in brown paper. "It's a birthday book," she said, "an old-fashioned birthday book, and it had your name in it. Your name, I remember you told me, was Winifred Morrison, wasn't it?" "Yes, my dear." "Quite right. And it was written in the birthday book, and so I wondered whether it would amuse you if I brought it along for you to see. It might have a lot of other old friends of yours in it, and different things, or names, which would amuse you." "Well, that was very nice of you, my dear." "Of course, I don't suppose there are many of them, I mean—" Tuppence paused, feeling that she might be about to say something tactless. "You're thinking most of them are dead, I suppose, dear. Well, you're quite right. Most of them are. But not all of them. No, I've still got quite a lot of people living with whom I was, as they say, girls together." "There weren't any Parkinsons left then, I suppose," said Tuppence. "I don't see the name anywhere." "Oh, no. It was after the Parkinsons' time. There's something you want to find out about the Parkinsons, isn't there?" "Oh, yes, there is," said Tuppence. "It's pure curiosity, you know, nothing else. But, well, somehow, in looking at things, I got interested in the boy, Alexander Parkinson, and then, as I was walking through the churchyard the other day, I noticed that he had died fairly young, and his grave was there, and that made me think about him more." "He died young," said Mrs. Griffin. "Yes. Everyone seems to think it was sad that he should have done so. He was a very intelligent boy, and they hoped for, well, quite a brilliant future for him. It wasn't really any illness, some food he had on a picnic, I believe. So Mrs. Henderson told me. She remembers a lot about the Parkinsons." "Mrs. Henderson?" Tuppence looked up. "Oh, you wouldn't know about her. She's in one of these old people's homes, you know. It's called Meadowside. It's about 12 or 15 miles from here. You ought to go and see her. She'd tell you a lot of things, I expect, about that house you're living in. Swallow's Nest, it was called then. It's called something else, isn't it now? The Laurels. Mrs. Henderson is older than I am, and she likes talking about old times very much. You ought to go and see her, I think. Just tell her that I suggested it." "You look tired, Tuppence," said Tommy, as at the close of dinner they went into the sitting-room, and Tuppence dropped into a chair, uttering several large sighs followed by a yawn. "Tired? I'm dead beat," said Tuppence. "I've been up at that old people's home, talking to lots of people. I made various notes about things, and I took the China menus along." "Oh, and what did that produce?" "Well, they were very thrilled, because it seemed it was one particular dinner that everyone had enjoyed very much, and they had had a wonderful meal. Apparently they had lobster salad for the first time. They said they'd always remember that evening. So I said, why would they always remember that evening? And they said it was because of the census." "The census?" "Yes. They were having a census that day, and so everyone had to say who was under their roof. And of course a lot of people were at the party, and they talked about it. The census might come in useful if you've got the exact date of it, said Tommy. Do you mean you could check it? Tuppence asked eagerly. Oh, yes. If one knows the right people, I think one could check up fairly easily. And they remembered Mary Jordan being talked about. Tuppence reverted to her original theme. Everyone said what a nice girl she had seemed, and how fond everyone was of her. And then there were stories of where people had put things or found things. There was a story about a will that was hidden in a Chinese vase. Something about Oxford and Cambridge, though I don't see how anyone would know about things being hidden in Oxford or Cambridge. It seems very unlikely. Perhaps someone had a nephew undergraduate, suggested Tommy, who took something back with him to Oxford or Cambridge. Possible, I suppose, but not likely. Did anyone actually talk about how Mary died? Tuppence nodded. They connected her death with the foxglove and spinach episode. Everyone recovered, they said, except her. Interesting, said Tommy thoughtfully. Mary Jordan did not die naturally. He had his suspicions. Wonder if he ever talked to a policeman about them. You mean Alexander? Yes. And perhaps he talked too much. He had to die. A lot depends on Alexander, doesn't it? Said Tuppence. Tommy said slowly, We know when Alexander died because of his grave here. But Mary Jordan, we still don't know when or why. He paused. Well, we'll find out in the end. Now, Tuppence, you list the names you've got and dates and things. You'll be surprised at what one can check up on through an odd word here and there. You do seem to have a lot of useful friends, said Tuppence enviously. So do you, said Tommy. Well, I don't really. Yes, you do. You set people in motion. You go and see one old lady with a birthday book. The next thing you know, you've been through masses of people in an old pensioners' home or something, and you know all about things that happened at the time of their great-aunts, great-grandmothers, Uncle Johns, and so on. Tuppence thought for a moment. I wonder who the undergraduates were who were mentioned. Oxford and Cambridge, the ones who were said to have hidden something, she said. They don't sound very like espionage, said Tommy. Has anyone tried any more funny things on you, Tuppence? Do you mean, has anyone attempted my life in the last 2 days? No, they haven't. Nobody's invited me to go on a picnic. The brakes of the car are all right. There's a jar of weed killer in the potting shed, but it doesn't even seem to be opened yet. Isaac keeps it there to be handy in case you come out with some mouldy sandwiches one day, Tommy said with a straight face. Oh, poor Isaac, said Tuppence. You are not to say things against Isaac. He's becoming one of my best friends. Now I wonder. That reminds me. What does that remind you of? I can't remember, said Tuppence, blinking her eyes. It reminded me of something when you said that about Isaac. The following day, Tommy came in from the garden to find Tuppence standing thoughtfully in the kitchen. What are you going to do this afternoon? He asked. Go on helping me with these lists of names and dates and things. I don't think so, said Tuppence. I think I'm going to disembowel Mathilde. I beg your pardon, Tuppence. I said I was going to disembowel Mathilde. She's in KK. What do you mean, she's in KK? You know, the rocking horse that's got a hole in her stomach. Oh, and you're going to examine her stomach. That's the idea, said Tuppence. I seem to remember it had a lot of sort of funny old paper stuff in it. That's the sort of place where anyone might have hidden anything, isn't it? Well, I suppose it's possible. Anyway, I thought I'd have a look. Would you like to come and help me? Not really, said Tommy. Would you be kind enough to come and help me? Suggested Tuppence. Put like that, said Tommy with a deep sigh, I will force myself to consent. The reversal of Mathilde to a position suitable for the necessary operation to take place was not an easy job. Mathilde was a very fair weight. In addition to that, she was very well studded with various nails which had points sticking out. Tuppence wiped blood from her hand, and Tommy swore as he caught his pullover, which immediately tore itself in a somewhat disastrous fashion. "Blow this damned rocking horse," said Tommy. "Ought to have been put on a bonfire years ago," said Tuppence. It was at that moment that the aged Isaac suddenly appeared and joined them. "Whatever be you two doing here now?" he said with some surprise. "What do you want with this old bit of horseflesh here?" "We want to turn it upside down so that we can get at the hole there and pull things out," said Tuppence. "What do you think you'll find there?" "Nothing but rubbish, I expect," said Tommy. "But it would be nice if things were cleared up a bit in here, you know. We might want to keep other things here. Games, perhaps. A croquet set. Something like that." "There used to be a croquet lawn once," said Isaac. "Long time ago. That was in Mrs. Faulkner's time. They do say as she played in the tournaments. They used to have them down here. Pictures I've seen down at the photographer's." "The photographer's?" "Ah, in the village. Durrance. Mind you, he's not the old Durrance as manages it now. It's his grandson, or his great-grandson, I shouldn't wonder. He sells mostly postcards, you know, and Christmas cards and birthday cards and things like that. He used to take photographs of people. Got a whole lot of albums tucked away." "Albums?" said Tuppence thoughtfully. "So, anything I can do?" said Isaac. "Well, just give us a bit of a hand with Mathilde," said Tommy. Isaac, having adjusted Mathilde into a good position, left them on the pretext of having to shut up the frames. Tommy removed his jacket. "It's incredible," said Tuppence, as she removed a scratched and dirty arm from the gaping wound in Mathilde's stomach, "that anyone could put so many things or want to put them in this thing, and that nobody should ever have cleaned it out." Tommy thrust his arm in and felt inside once more. A knitted scarf rewarded him. It had clearly been the sustenance of moths at one time, and possibly after that had descended to an even lower level of social life. "Disgusting," said Tommy. Tuppence pushed him aside slightly, and fished in with her own arm, leaning over Mathilde while she felt about inside. "Mind the nails," said Tommy. "What's this?" said Tuppence. "Feels rather like an animal's skin." She drew out her find cautiously. "It's a pocket-book," she said. "Yes, it was quite good leather once, I think. And there's something inside it." She was fumbling now in the leather case. "Let's get out of KK for a minute," said Tommy, "and get some air." Outside in the sunlight, they could see their trophy better. It was a thick leather wallet of good quality, stiff with age, but not in any way destroyed. "I think it's letters," said Tuppence. "I don't know whether we'll be able to read them now. They're very old and faded." Very carefully, Tommy arranged the crinkled yellow paper of the letters. The writing was quite large, and had originally been in a very deep blue-black ink. "Meeting place changed," read Tommy. "Ken Gardens near Peter Pan, Wednesday the 25th, 3:30 p.m. Joanna." "I really believe," said Tuppence, "we might have something at last." "You mean that someone who'd be going to London was told to go on a certain day and meet someone in Kensington Gardens bringing perhaps the papers or the plans or whatever it was? Who do you think got these things out of Mathilde, or put them into Mathilde?" "It wouldn't have been a child," said Tuppence. "It must have been someone who lived in the house, and so could move about without being noticed. Got things from the naval spy, I suppose, and took them to London." Tuppence wrapped up the old leather wallet in the scarf she'd been wearing, and she and Tommy returned to the house. A rather bulky package was lying on the hall table. As they looked at it, Albert came out from the dining room. "It's for you, madam," he said. "Left by hand this morning." "I wonder what it is," said Tuppence, picking it up. Tommy and she went into the sitting room together. Tuppence undid the knot of the string and took off the brown paper wrapping. "It's a kind of album," she said. "Oh, there's a note with it, from Mrs. Griffin. Dear Mrs. Beresford, it was so kind of you to bring me the birthday book the other day. I have had great pleasure looking over it and remembering various people from past days. A little time ago, I came across this old album. I think it belonged to my grandmother, but it has a good many pictures in it, and among them, I think, there are one or two of the Parkinsons, because my grandmother knew the Parkinsons. I thought perhaps you would like to see it as you seem to be so interested in the history of your house and the people who lived in it in the past." "A photo album," said Tuppence. "Well, that might be fun. Come along, let's have a look." They sat down on the sofa. The album was very typical of bygone days. Most of the prints were faded by now, but every now and then Tuppence managed to recognize surroundings that fitted the gardens of their own house. "Look, there's the monkey puzzle. Yes, and look, there's Truelove, and a funny little boy hanging on to him. That must be a very old photograph. Yes, and there's the wisteria, and there's the pampas grass. I suppose it must have been a tea party or something. Yes, there are a lot of people sitting round a table in the garden. They've got names underneath them, too. Mabel. Mabel's no beauty. And who's that?" "Charles," said Tommy. "Charles and Edmund. Charles and Edmund seem to have been playing tennis. They've got rather queer tennis rackets. And there's William, whoever he was, and Major Coates. And there's... Oh, Tommy, there's Mary." Yes, Mary Jordan. Both names there, written under the photograph. She was pretty. Very pretty, I think. It is very faded and old, but... Oh, Tommy, it really seems wonderful to see Mary Jordan. I wonder who took the photograph. Perhaps the photographer that Isaac mentioned, the one in the village here. Perhaps he'd have old photographs, too. I think one day we'll go and ask." Tommy had pushed aside the album by now, and was opening some letters which had come in the midday post. "Anything interesting?" asked Tuppence. "It may be," said Tommy. "I'll have to go to London tomorrow again. I'm going to call on someone called Colonel Pikeway." "Have I heard of him before?" said Tuppence. "I may have mentioned it to you once. He is in a kind of permanent atmosphere of smoke. Have you got any cough lozenges, Tuppence?" "Yes, I think I have. I've got an old box of them from last winter. But you haven't got a cough?" "No, but I shall have if I go and see Pikeway. As far as I can remember, you take 2 choking breaths, and then go on choking." "Why do you think he wants to see you?" "Can't imagine," said Tommy. "He mentions Robinson." "What? The yellow one? The one who's got a fat yellow face and is something very hush-hush?" "That's the one," said Tommy. "Oh, well," said Tuppence, "I shall go and see that photographer man this afternoon, I think. Want to come?" "No," said Tommy. "I think I shall go down and bathe." "Bathe? It'll be awfully cold." "Never mind. I feel I need something cold and refreshing to remove the taste of cobwebs in KK." "This does seem to be a dirty job," said Tuppence. "Oh, who was the other letter from?" "My researcher," said Tommy, in a rather grand voice. "The one who's been looking up births, deaths, and marriages, and consulting newspaper files and census returns. She's very good. Good and beautiful." "Not beautiful so that you'd notice it," said Tommy. "I'm glad about that," said Tuppence. "You don't appreciate a faithful husband when you've got one," said Tommy. "All my friends tell me you never know with husbands," said Tuppence. "You've got the wrong kind of friends," said Tommy. Tommy drove through Regent's Park, then through various roads he'd not seen for years. The last time he'd been to see Colonel Pikeway, it had been in Bloomsbury, a poky room full of smoke. Here, when he reached the address, it was a small, nondescript house fronting Hampstead Heath, not far from the birthplace of Keats. It did not look either particularly artistic or interesting. When Tommy was shown into an upstairs room, he doubted he would have remembered Colonel Pikeway, apart from the smoke and the smell of nicotine. A very old man lay back in an armchair, and looked up thoughtfully as Tommy entered. "Thomas Beresford," said Colonel Pikeway. "Well, well, how many years is it since I saw you?" Tommy had not made a proper computation. "Long time ago," said Colonel Pikeway. "Sit down, my boy. Sit down." Tommy was slightly startled at being called my boy again, but he availed himself of the invitation. "Well, well, I'm pleased to see you," Colonel Pikeway went on. "You look a bit older than you did, but you seem quite healthy. Ever had a coronary?" "No," said Tommy. "Good. Now I understand you've been to see Robinson. He's still going strong. Knows about money, where it comes from, where it goes. He knows who's behind things." Colonel Pikeway looked hard at Tommy. "What took you there, my boy?" "Well, we had bought a new house, and a friend of mine advised me that Mr. Robinson might be able to clear up a mystery to do with it, relating to a long time back." The old man nodded. "I don't believe I ever met her, but you've got a clever wife, haven't you?" "So, you went to live at Swallow's Nest?" "Well, it's called the Laurels now," said Tommy. "Silly name," said Colonel Pikeway. "Very popular at one time, though. Yes, Swallow's Nest goes back a long time. But sometimes one has to go back. In fact, that's what I was going to talk to you about. Going back." "Did you ever know the house, sir?" Tommy asked. "No, I never went there, but it figured in certain things. It's tied up with certain periods in the past, people over a certain period, a time of great anxiety to this country." Again the colonel looked searchingly at Tommy. "Now, I gather you've come in contact with some information pertaining to someone called Mary Jordan, or known by that name. So Mr. Robinson told us." "There was some idea locally that she was a German spy," said Tommy. "Mr. Robinson told me that wasn't the case." "No, it wasn't the case. She belonged to us. And she did good work for us, too. But somebody got wise to her." "That was when there were people called Parkinson living in the house," said Tommy. Maybe. I don't know all the details. Nobody does nowadays. I wasn't personally involved, you know. All this has been raked up since. Because you see, there's always trouble. There's trouble in every country. There's trouble all over the world now, and not for the first time. No. You can go back 100 years and you'll find trouble. And you can go back another 100 years and you'll find trouble. Go back to the Crusades and you'll find everyone dashing out of the country going to deliver Jerusalem, or you'll find risings all over the country. This, that, and the other. There's always trouble." "Do you mean there's some special trouble now?" Tommy asked. "Of course there is. I tell you, there's always trouble. You've got to look into the past sometimes. You've got to know what was happening then, what secrets people had, what knowledge they had that they kept to themselves, what they hid away, what they pretended was happening and what was really happening. You've done good jobs, you and your missus, at different times. Do you want to go on with it now?" "I don't know," said Tommy. "But what is this all about? Of course I'm quite willing to do anything if you thought I could. But I don't know. Nobody's told me anything." "I don't suppose they will," said Colonel Pikeway. "I don't think they want me to tell you anything. But I will tell you the bare facts. There are people you knew, people who had power and brains, and their power and brains brought money and influence. Some of their activities were secret, but we've got to find out about them. Find out who their secrets passed to, who they've been handed down to, who may be running things now. Swallow's Nest was a type of headquarters, a headquarters for what I should call evil. Later in Hollowquay there was something else. Do you remember Jonathan Kane at all?" "It's a name," said Tommy. "I don't remember anything personally." "Well, he was said to be what was admired at one time, what came to be known later as a fascist. That was the time before we knew what Hitler was going to be like and all the rest of them. This chap, Jonathan Kane, had followers, a lot of followers. He had plans, he had sources of power, he knew the secrets of a lot of people. We want to know what he knew, what he did. And I think it's possible he left both plans and followers behind him. I see, said Tommy. We know some things. We guess others. But we've got to find out more because things are happening all the time. In different countries, in different places, in wars, in Vietnam, in guerrilla wars, in Israel, even in the uninvolved countries. In Sweden and Switzerland, anywhere, things are happening and we want clues to them. And there's some idea that some of the clues could be found in the past. Well, you can't go back into the past. You can't go to a doctor and say, hypnotize me and let me see what happened in 1914 or in 1918 or in 1890. He paused, then continued, We have a feeling lately that some of the things that have been invented, germ warfare, for example, are difficult to explain except through the process of some secret development which was thought to be unimportant. But it hasn't been unimportant. It's got into the hands of certain persons who have adapted it and produced very frightening results. Colonel Pikeway stared into the fire for a moment. Things that can change a character for good can also turn a good man into a fiend, and usually for the same reason. Money. Money and what money can buy, what money can get, the power that money can develop. Well, young Beresford, what do you say to all that? Do you think 'tis just an old man's fantasies? No, sir, said Tommy. I think you're a man who knows things. You always have been a man who knew things. And I've learned that the most amazing things are true, things you couldn't believe could be true. But what I have to make you understand, sir, is that I have no qualifications. I have no scientific knowledge. I have been concerned always with security. But, said Colonel Pikeway, you're a man who has always been able to find out things. You and your wife. I tell you she's got a nose for things. You're in the right place by accident. There you are, an ordinary couple, elderly, retired, seeking for a nice house to end your days in, poking about into the corners of it, interested in talking. Some sentence one day will tell you something. That's all I want you to do. Look about. Find out what legends or stories are told about the good old days or the bad old days. A naval scandal, plans of a submarine or something. That's talked about still, said Tommy. Several people keep mentioning it, but nobody really seems to know anything about it. Colonel Pikeway nodded. Well, that's a good starting point. It was round about then Jonathan Cain lived in that part, you know. He had a cottage down near the sea, and he ran his propaganda campaign round there. He had disciples who thought he was wonderful. Jonathan Cain. K-A-N-E. But I would rather spell it a different way. I'd spell it C-A-I-N. That would describe him better. He was set on destruction. Now, one thing I've got to tell you. Look about you, yes, ferret out things. But for goodness sake, take care of yourselves, both of you. Take care of that, what's her name, Tuppence, and tell Tuppence to take care of you. Take care of what you eat and what you drink and where you go, and who is making up to you and being friendly, and why should they? Tommy looked a little startled. I see, he said slowly. Colonel Pikeway nodded. A little information comes along. Something odd or unusual. Some story in the past that might mean something. Someone perhaps who's a descendant or a relative, or someone who knew people in the past. Make a note of it, my boy. I'll do what I can, said Tommy. We both will. But I don't feel that we'll be able to do it. We're too old. We don't know enough. You can have ideas. Yes, Tuppence has ideas. She thinks that something might be hidden in our house. So it might. Others have had the same idea. Nobody's ever found anything so far, but then they haven't really looked with any assurance at all. Houses and families change. The houses get sold, and somebody else moves in. Take your house. Lestrangers and Mortimers and Parkinsons. Well, nothing much there except for one of the Parkinson boys. Alexander Parkinson. So you know about him. How did you manage that?" "He left a message for someone to find in one of Robert Louis Stevenson's books. Mary Jordan did not die naturally. We found it." "You found it," agreed the Colonel. "The fate of every man we have bound about his neck. Some saying like that, isn't there? Carry on, you two. Pass through the postern of fate." Mr. Durrance's shop was halfway up the village. It was a corner site, and had a few photographs displayed in the window. None of the photographs were very good, and some of them displayed signs of age. There were also postcards in large numbers, birthday cards, and a certain amount of stationery and envelopes bearing floral designs. A rather tall young man with long flaxen hair and a budding beard came along the counter towards Tuppence, looking at her questioningly. "Can I help you in any way?" "Really," said Tuppence, "I wanted to ask about albums. You see, I collect old albums, ones like this." She produced, with the air of a conjurer, the album she'd been sent. "Oh, that goes back a long time, doesn't it?" said Mr. Durrance. "I wondered whether you had any old albums. You know, the sort of things people don't want anymore, but they interest me as a collector. I like having different specimens." "Well, everyone collects something nowadays, that's true enough," said Durrance. "You'd hardly believe it, the things people collect. I don't think I've got anything as old as this one of yours, though. However, I could look around." He went behind the counter and pulled open a drawer against the wall. "Lot of stuff in here," he said. "I meant to turn it out sometime, but I didn't know as there'd really be any market for it." Tuppence felt that she was getting on good terms with Mr. Durrance and decided to hurry things along. "I don't suppose you'd have any photographs of someone called, I think her name was Mary Jordan, some name like that, but it was a long time ago, about, I suppose 60 years. I think she died here." "Well, it'd be well before my time," said Mr. Durrance. "Father kept a good many things. You know, he was one of those hoarders, they call them." "Mary Jordan. I seem to remember something about her. Something to do with the Navy, wasn't it? And a submarine. And they said she was a spy." "Yes. I just wondered if you had any pictures of her." "Well, I don't think so. I'll have a look around sometime, when I've got a little time. I'll let you know if anything turns up." "Perhaps you're a writer, are you?" he said hopefully. "Well," said Tuppence, "I am thinking of bringing out a rather small book. You know, recalling the times of anything from 100 years ago down till today. And of course old photographs are very interesting, and would illustrate the book beautifully. Well, I'll do everything I can to help you, I'm sure." Tuppence, having felt that she'd opened relations satisfactorily, though not particularly hopeful that any result would come of it, bought a few postcards and some flowered notes in the way of stationery, and wished Mr. Durrance goodbye. She went back to her gate, walked up the drive, then checked on the way to the house, and went round by the side path to have one more look at KK. As she got near the door, she hesitated a moment. Something that looked like a bundle of clothes was lying near the door. Something they'd pulled out of Matilda and not thought to look at, Tuppence wondered. She quickened her pace, almost running. When she got near the door, she stopped suddenly. It was not a bundle of old clothes. The clothes were old enough, and so was the body that wore them. Tuppence bent over, and then stood up again, steadied herself with a hand on the door. Somebody was coming towards her on the path from the house. She called out, taking a step or two forwards. "Oh, Albert! Albert! Something awful's happened to Isaac. He's lying there, and he's dead. And I think somebody has killed him." The medical evidence had been given. 2 passers-by not far from the gate had given their evidence. The family had spoken, giving evidence as to the state of his health. Any possible people who had had reason for enmity towards him had been asked to assist the police, and had protested their innocence. 1 or 2 of his employers had spoken, including his latest employer, Mrs. Prudence Beresford, and her husband, Mr. Thomas Beresford. All had been said and done, and a verdict had been brought in. Willful murder by a person or persons unknown. Tuppence came out from the inquest, and Tommy put an arm round her as they passed the little group of people waiting outside. "You did very well, Tuppence," he said, as they returned through the garden gate towards the house. "Very well indeed. Much better than some of those people. You were very clear, and you could be heard. The coroner seemed to me to be very pleased with you." "I don't want anyone to be very pleased with me," said Tuppence. "I don't like old Isaac being coshed on the head and killed like that." "I suppose someone might have had it in for him," said Tommy. "Why should they?" said Tuppence. "I don't know," said Tommy. "No," said Tuppence. "And I don't know either. But I just wondered if it's anything to do with us." "What do you mean, Tuppence?" "You know what I mean, really," said Tuppence. "It's this place, our house, our lovely new house and garden and everything. It's as though, isn't it just the right place for us?" "We thought it was," said Tuppence. "Well, I still do," said Tommy. "Yes," said Tuppence. "I think you've got more hope than I have. I've got an uneasy feeling that there's something wrong with it all here. Something left over from the past." "Don't say it again," said Tommy. "Don't say what again?" "Oh, just those 2 words." Tuppence dropped her voice. She got nearer to Tommy and spoke almost into his ear. "Mary Jordan." "Well, yes, that was in my mind. And in my mind too, I expect. But I mean, what can anything then have to do with nowadays? What can the past matter?" said Tuppence. "It oughtn't to have anything to do with it. Now." "The past oughtn't to have anything to do with the present. Is that what you mean?" "But it does," said Tommy. "It does, in queer ways that one doesn't think of. I mean that one doesn't think would ever happen." "A lot of things, you mean, happen because of what there was in the past?" "Yes, a sort of long chain. The sort of thing you have, with gaps and then with beads on it from time to time." "But now," said Tuppence, "this makes it all different. This, I mean. Isaac, dead, coshed on the head, just inside our garden gate." Tommy looked at her. "You don't think that's connected with—" "One can't help thinking it might be," said Tuppence. "That's what I mean. We're not just investigating a sort of detective mystery anymore, finding out why somebody died in the past and things like that. It's become personal. I mean, poor old Isaac being dead. Someone wanted to kill him. What for? If it was anything to do with us, then why didn't they want to kill us?" said Tommy. "Why old Isaac?" "Well, perhaps they'll try that too," Tuppence replied. "Perhaps Isaac was going to tell us something. Perhaps he even threatened somebody else that he was going to talk to us, say something he knew about the girl or one of the Parkinsons, or all this spying business in the 1914 war, the secrets that were sold. So he had to be silenced. But if we hadn't come to live here and ask questions and wanted to find out, it wouldn't have happened." "Don't get so worked up," Tommy said gently. "I am worked up," Tuppence cried, "and I'm not doing anything for fun anymore. This isn't fun. We're doing something different now, Tommy. We're hunting down a killer. That's not the past. That's now. It's here, and it's connected with us, and it's connected with this house. And we've got to find out, and we're going to find out." "Good gracious," said Tommy when he returned home the following evening. "You look terribly tired, Tuppence. What have you been doing? You look worn out." "I am worn out," said Tuppence. "I don't know that I shall ever recover again. I've been talking to lots of old people at a pensioners' club." "Was any of it interesting?" "I don't know," said Tuppence. "But I think I've got a few ideas for dealing with things." "What do you mean?" "Well, there are a lot of old tales about something that was once hidden here, some kind of secret connected with the 1914 war, or even before it." "Well, we know that already, don't we?" said Tommy. "I mean, we've been briefed about that. We just don't know exactly what we're looking for." "No, we don't." Tuppence sighed. "Do you think we'll ever get anywhere, Tommy?" "I don't know," said Tommy. "I got a little bit of help today." "Oh, what about?" "The census. That year, there were a good many people staying in this house with the Parkinsons, so when Alexander said it must be one of us, it could have meant someone who was in the house at that time, someone whose name would be entered on the census register." He paused. "Now, what about you?" "Well," said Tuppence, getting out her notebook, "while I was with the pensioners, I made some notes, to go with the other things we've heard. A great many of them don't seem to have any point, but there it is." "Fine," said Tommy. "There was someone called Mrs. Henderson. That's the old lady Mrs. Griffin sent me to see, and she kept talking about someone else called Dodo. Then there was a message, or a notice, something about Oxford and Cambridge. And there's somebody who lives in a house called Apple Tree Lodge, and there's something I found on a dirty bit of paper shoved into one of the books upstairs." "What sort of something?" asked Tommy. "It seems to be 3 pencil words. Grin, Grin, then hen, Hen, and then lo, capital Lo. "Well, let me guess," said Tommy. "Cheshire Cat, that's a grin. Henny Penny, that's another fairy story, isn't it, for the hen, and lo." "Ah," said Tuppence, "lo does you in, does it?" "Lo and behold," said Tommy, "but it doesn't seem to make sense." Tuppence spoke rapidly. "Mrs. Henderson, Appletree Lodge, Mrs. Griffin, Oxford and Cambridge, census, Cheshire Cat, Henny Penny. I don't think there's much else." Tommy said. "I should think the odds are on our being rather silly. But I think if we go on being silly long enough, some gem of great price might come out of it, concealed among the rubbish, as you might say, just as we found one significant book on the bookshelves upstairs." "Oxford and Cambridge," said Tuppence thoughtfully. "It makes me think of something. And then there's grin, hen, lo. Doesn't make sense. And yet, I have a kind of feeling. Oh, Tommy, I've got an idea. Of course, the Oxford and Cambridge boat race." "Why does grin, hen, lo make you think of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race?" "It's nothing to do with the boat race. It's the colours, I mean." "What do you mean, Tuppence?" "Grin, hen, lo. We've been reading it the wrong way round. It's meant to be read the other way round, like what Alexander did in the book, the first book that we looked at. Read those 3 words the other way round. Lo, hen, grin. The Swan. The opera. You know, Lohengrin, Wagner." "But there's nothing to do with a swan." "Yes, there is. Those 2 pieces of china we found, stools for the garden, you remember? One was dark blue and one was light blue, and old Isaac said to us, 'That's Oxford, you see, and that's Cambridge.' Well, we smashed the Oxford one, didn't we?" "Yes, but the Cambridge one is still there, the light blue one. It's still in KK. Didn't you see, Tommy? Lohengrin, something was hidden in one of those 2 swans." The following morning, a procession formed consisting of Tommy, Tuppence, Hannibal the dog, with Albert, abandoning the breakfast washing up for something more interesting, bringing up the rear. Inside KK, the Cambridge china stool with the swan wreathed round it was looking rather handsome. Obviously Isaac had polished it up and washed it, with the idea of transferring it to the veranda when the weather was suitable for sitting out. "I suppose there's no real way of getting inside these things," said Tuppence. "Well, you can smash them, like the dark blue one was smashed." Albert sniffed. "You can unscrew 'em, you know," he said. "You turn them upside down, and then you begin to swing the top round. It's stiff sometimes." At first, Cambridge seemed to be entirely obstreperous. Then quite suddenly, the china began to revolve, and very shortly afterwards, they managed to unscrew it completely and lift it off. "Lot of rubbish in here, I should think," said Tommy. Hannibal came to assist. He was a dog who liked helping in anything that was going on. He stuck his nose down, growled gently, retired an inch or two and sat down. "Doesn't like it much, does he?" said Tuppence, and then looked down into the somewhat unpleasant mass inside. Tommy put his hand into Cambridge. "There's something hung on a nail just inside," he said. "Yes, I've got it." And he lifted out a dark tarpaulin package. Hannibal came and sat at Tuppence's feet. He growled. "What's the matter, Hannibal?" said Tuppence. Hannibal sniffed at the trophy just disinterred from the inside of Cambridge. He wheeled round suddenly then and barked. "See if there's anyone outside," said Tuppence. Tommy opened the door and went outside. Hannibal accompanied him. "Nobody here," said Tommy. Hannibal growled. Then he barked again more loudly. "He thinks there's someone or something in that great clump of pampas grass," said Tommy. Hannibal shook himself, looked at Tommy, looked at Tuppence, and made a prancing attack on the pampas grass, barking loudly. There was a sudden sound, 2 sharp explosions. "Good Lord, somebody must be shooting rabbits," exclaimed Tuppence. Get back inside KK, Tuppence," said Tommy. Something flew past his ear. Hannibal, now fully alerted, was racing round and round the pampas grass. Tommy ran after him. "He's chasing someone now," he called. "He's chasing someone down the hill. He's running like mad." "Who was it? What was it?" said Tuppence as Tommy returned breathless. "Are you all right, Tuppence?" "No," said Tuppence. "Something hit me, I think, here, just below the shoulder." "What was it?" "It was someone shooting at us. Someone who was hidden inside that pampas grass." "Someone who was watching what we were doing," said Tuppence. They returned quickly to the house. Tommy went out into the hall to the telephone. "What are you doing?" said Tuppence. "Telephoning the police," said Tommy. "Can't let anything like this pass. They may get onto someone if we're in time." "I think," said Tuppence, "that I want something put on my shoulder. This blood is ruining my best jumper." "Never mind your jumper," said Tommy. Albert appeared at that moment with a complete first aid service. "Well, I never," he said. "You mean some dirty guy has shot at the missus? Whatever's happening in this country?" "You don't think you ought to go to the hospital, do you?" said Tommy. "No, I don't," said Tuppence. "But I want an outside band-aid or something to stick on here. Have you got the thing all right?" "What thing? What do you mean, Tuppence?" "The thing we just got out of the Cambridge Lohengrin. That's what I mean. The thing that was hanging on a nail. Perhaps it's something important. They saw us, and if they tried to kill us, and tried to get whatever it was, that really would be something." Tommy sat in the police station with Inspector Norris, who was nodding his head gently. "With any luck we may get results, Mr. Beresford," he said. "Dr. Crossfield, you say, is attending your wife?" "Yes," said Tommy. "It isn't serious, I gather. She was just grazed by a bullet, and it bled a good deal. But she's going to be all right, I think." "I've heard a good deal about her locally, you know, since you came here to live," said Inspector Norris. "People have taken to her in a big way. We've heard about her various activities, and about yours." "Oh dear," said Tommy. "We'll do all we can to clear things up. You can't describe whoever it was, I suppose?" "No," said Tommy. "When I saw him he was running with our dog after him. I should say he was not very old. He ran easily, I mean." Tommy and the inspector looked at each other. "If I may say one thing," said Inspector Norris. "Yes," said Tommy, looking rather doubtful. "This garden of yours, you want a bit of help in it, I understand. Our gardener was killed, as you probably know." "Yes, I know all about that." "Well, what I was going to say was, it's likely someone may come and ask you whether you'd like a chap to come and do a bit of job in gardening for you. He'll tell you, for reference, that he worked for some years for Mr. Solomon. You'll remember that name, will you?" "Mr. Solomon," said Tommy. There seemed to be something like a twinkle for a moment in Inspector Norris's eye. "Yes, he's dead, of course, Mr. Solomon, I mean. But he did live here, and he did employ several different jobbing gardeners. I'm not quite sure what name this chap will give you. It might be one of several. But it's likely to be Crispin, I think. between 30 and 50 or so, and he worked for Mr. Solomon. If anyone comes along and says he can do some job in gardening for you and doesn't mention Mr. Solomon, I wouldn't accept him. That's just a word of warning. Once again, Tommy sat in the smoke-filled room in London. "Good man," said Colonel Pikeway, puffing out smoke. "Sorry to send for you so urgently, but after your little adventure, I thought I'd better see you." "I've brought you the results today," said Tommy. "I didn't like to send them by post." "No, quite right." It was in a kind of tin box hanging in Lohengrin, pale blue Lohengrin, Cambridge blue, Victorian China outdoor garden stool. Remember them myself in the old days. Had an aunt in the country who used to have a pair. It was very well preserved, sewn up in tarpaulin. Inside it are letters. They are somewhat perished, but I expect with expert treatment. Yes, we can manage that sort of thing all right. "After we were fired at," said Tommy, "I reported it at once to the police." "Quite right." "Then I was asked to go down to the police station the next day, and I saw Inspector Norris. I think he's rather a new officer." "Yes, probably on a special assignment," said Colonel Pikeway. He puffed out more smoke and tapped a nail on the metal box. "This little box is going to tell us something, though, and it's going to tell us something we've always wanted to know. Who was involved a great many years ago in setting things going and doing a lot of dirty work behind the scenes. But surely, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, whoever it was is now dead. That's true. But it tells us, nevertheless, what was going on, how it was set in motion, who helped, who inspired it, and who has inherited or carried on with something of the same business ever since. It's sheer chance you ever came to live in the Laurels at all, and we've got hopes that it may lead to a piece of luck for us. But I don't want it to be a cause of disaster to you or to your missus. Suspect everyone and everything. It's the best way." Tuppence was walking along the garden path when she was accosted by Albert, coming down at a quick pace from the house. "There's a Miss Mullins to see you, recommended by one of the ladies in the village to call on you." "Oh, of course," said Tuppence. "Is it about the garden?" "Yes, she said something about the garden." "I think you'd better bring her out here," said Tuppence. "Yes, madam," said Albert, falling into his role of experienced butler. He went back to the house and returned a few moments later, bringing with him a tall, masculine-looking woman in tweed trousers and a fair-ar pullover. "Chilly wind this morning," she said. Her voice was deep and slightly hoarse. "I'm Iris Mullins. Mrs. Griffin suggested I should come along and see you, wanting some help in the garden. Is that it?" "Good morning," said Tuppence, shaking hands. "I'm very pleased to see you. Yes, we do want some help in the garden. I'm afraid the last people who lived here didn't care much about how the garden looked." Albert reappeared suddenly. "Mrs. Redcliffe on the telephone, madam," he said. "Wanted to know if you could lunch tomorrow." "Tell her I'm very sorry," said Tuppence. "I'm afraid we may have to go to London tomorrow." "Oh, wait a minute, Albert. Just wait while I write a word or two." She pulled out a small pad from her bag, wrote a few words on it, and handed it to Albert. "Tell Mr. Beresford that Miss Mullins is here and we're in the garden," she said. "I forgot to give him the address of the person he is writing to. I've written it here." "Certainly, madam," said Albert, and disappeared. Tuppence returned to the garden conversation. "I expect you're very busy," she said. Miss Mullins nodded. "Yes, I do 3 days a week, on the other side of town near where I live. I've got a small cottage." At that moment, Tommy arrived from the house. Hannibal was with him, running round in large circles. Hannibal reached Tuppence first. He stopped still for a moment, spread out his paws, and then rushed at Miss Mullins, barking fiercely. She took a step or two back in alarm. "This is our terrible dog," said Tuppence. "He doesn't really bite, you know, at least very seldom. It's usually only the postman he likes to bite." "All dogs bite postmen, or try to," said Miss Mullins. "Here is my husband," said Tuppence. "This is Miss Mullins, Tommy. Mrs. Griffin very kindly told her that we wanted someone who could possibly do some gardening for us." "Oh," said Tommy. "But perhaps the work would be too heavy for you, Miss Mullins," Of course not, said Miss Mullins in her deep voice. I can dig with anyone. You've got to dig the right way. The ground's got to be prepared makes all the difference. Hannibal continued to bark. I think, Tommy, said Tuppence, you'd really better take Hannibal back to the house. He seems to be in a rather protective mood this morning. All right, said Tommy. Won't you come back to the house, said Tuppence to Miss Mullins, and have something to drink? It's rather a hot morning, and I think it will be a good thing, don't you? And we can discuss plans together, perhaps. Hannibal was shut into the kitchen, and Miss Mullins accepted a glass of sherry. A few suggestions were made. Then Miss Mullins looked at her watch and said she must hurry back. She bade them a somewhat hurried farewell and departed. She seems all right, said Tuppence. I know, said Tommy, but one can't ever be sure. You understand, Albert, said Tommy. Yes, sir, said Albert. I understand. You know, I think you'll get a bit of a warning from Hannibal. He's a good dog in some ways, said Albert. Doesn't take to everyone, of course. No, said Tommy. That's not his job in life. Now I'm making Tuppence stay in bed today. I'm leaving her in your charge, more or less. Albert had just opened the front door to a youngish man in a tweed suit with a friendly smile on his face. Mr. Beresford, I've heard you want a bit of help in your garden. I did some work locally a couple of years ago, for a Mr. Solomon. You may have heard of him. Mr. Solomon, yes. Someone did mention him, Tommy said carefully. My name's Crispin, Angus Crispin. Perhaps we might take a look at what wants doing. About time someone did something about the garden, said Mr. Crispin, as Tommy led him on a tour of the flower beds and the vegetable garden. That's where they used to grow the spinach along this kitchen garden path here, he pointed. There were some frames behind it. They used to grow melons, too. You seem to be very well informed, Mr. Crispin observed. Well, one hears a lot, you know, about who had what in the old days. Old ladies tell you about the flower beds, and Alexander Parkinson told a lot of his pals about the foxglove leaves. He must have been a rather remarkable boy, said Mr. Crispin. Well, he had ideas, and he was very keen on crime. He made a kind of coded message in one of Stevenson's books, The Black Arrow. Rather good one, that, isn't it? I read it myself about 5 years ago, when I was working for— Mr. Crispin hesitated. Mr. Solomon? Suggested Tommy. Yes, that's the name. So far, said Tommy, everything seems to be lists. Names from the past, but names naturally that don't mean anything to me. They can't. All hearsay. Mostly. My wife has listened to a lot of it and made some lists. I don't know whether any of them mean anything. I've got one list myself. It only came into my hands yesterday, as a matter of fact. Oh? What's your list? Census, said Tommy. There was a census on— can't remember the exact date, but I've got it written down and I'll give it to you. And the people who were staying here at the time were ended up on it. It was a big party, a dinner party. So you know on a certain date, and perhaps quite an interesting date, who was here? Yes, said Tommy. It might be valuable. It might be quite significant. They walked along in silence for a few minutes. About the garden, said Tommy. There was a Miss Mullins who came yesterday. Mullins? Mullins, is she a gardener? I gather something in that line. It was a Mrs. Griffin, I think, who mentioned her to my wife, and who sent her along to see us. Did you fix up with her or not? Not definitely, said Tommy. As a matter of fact, we've got a rather enthusiastic guard dog here, a Manchester Terrier. Barked a lot at Miss Mullins. Nice dogs, said Crispin. Very affectionate, very loyal, very self-willed, very sharp teeth. I'd better look out for him, I suppose. He's all right at the moment. He's up in the house. Miss Mullins, said Crispin thoughtfully. Yes. Yes, that's interesting. Why is it interesting? Oh, well, I wouldn't know her by that name, of course. Is she between 50 and 60? Yes, very tweedy and countrified. Yes, Got some country connections, too. Isaac could have told you something about her, I expect. I heard she'd come back to live here not so very long ago either. Things tie up, you know. Albert tapped on the bedroom door, and in answer to Tuppence's "Come in," advanced his head round the side of it. "The ladies came the other morning," he said. "Miss Mullins, she's here, wants to speak to you for a minute or two." "All right," said Tuppence. "I was just going to bring your morning coffee up." "Well, you can bring that up and another cup." "What about Hannibal?" said Albert. "Shall I take him down and shut him up in the kitchen?" "He doesn't like being shut up in the kitchen. No, just push him into the bathroom, and shut the door when you've done so." Hannibal, resenting the insult, was pushed into the bathroom with a bow to Grace. Albert closed the door. Hannibal gave several loud, fierce barks. "Oh, Mrs. Beresford," cried Miss Mullins, "I'm afraid I'm intruding, but I really thought you'd like to look at this book I have on gardening, Suggestions for Planting at this time of year. Oh, yes, I would like a cup of coffee. Please let me pour it out for you. It's so difficult when you're in bed. I wonder, perhaps—" Miss Mullins looked at Albert, who obligingly drew up a chair. "That be all right for you, miss?" he demanded. "Oh, yes, very nice indeed. Dear me, is that another bell downstairs?" "Milk, I expect," said Albert. "Or might be the grocer. It's his morning. Excuse me, won't you?" He went out of the room, shutting the door behind him. "Do you cake sugar, Mrs. Beresford?" "1 lump," said Tuppence. Miss Mullins put down the coffee beside Tuppence and went to pour out a cup for herself. Suddenly she stumbled, clutched at an occasional table, and went down on her knees with an exclamation of dismay. "Have you hurt yourself?" demanded Tuppence. "No, oh no, but I've broken your vase. I caught my foot in something so clumsy, and your beautiful vase is smashed. Dear Mrs. Beresford, what will you think of me? I assure you it was an accident." "Of course it was," said Tuppence kindly. "Let me see. Well, it looks as if it could be worse. It's broken in 2, which means we shall be able to glue it together. I dare say the join will hardly show." "I shall still feel awful about it," declared Miss Mullins. "Oh dear, is that another bell downstairs?" "Albert'll answer it," said Tuppence. "He can always bring up a message if necessary." It was, however, Tommy who answered the telephone. "Hello?" he said. "Yes?" "Oh, I see." "Who?" "I see. Yes." "Oh. An enemy. Definite enemy." "Yes, that's all right. We've taken the countermeasures all right." "Yes. Thank you very much." He dropped the receiver back and looked at Mr. Crispin. "Words of warning?" said Mr. Crispin. "Yes," said Tommy. "Come up, will you? Tuppence is only resting." Tommy and Mr. Crispin went upstairs. Tommy gave a little tap on the bedroom door and they went in. From inside the bathroom, Hannibal gave one more outspoken bark of defiance, then he leapt at the door, the latch gave, and he shot out into the room. He gave one quick glance at Mr. Crispin, then lunged forward, growling furiously at Miss Mullins. "Oh dear," said Tuppence. "Oh dear." "Good boy, Hannibal," said Tommy. "Good boy. Don't you think so?" He turned his head to Mr. Crispin. "Knows his enemies, doesn't he? And your enemies." "Oh dear," said Tuppence. "Has Hannibal bitten you?" "A very nasty nip," said Miss Mullins, rising to her feet and scowling at Hannibal. "His second one, isn't it?" said Tommy. "Chased you out of our pampas grass, didn't he?" "He knows what's what," said Mr. Crispin. "Doesn't he, Dodo, my dear? Long time since I've seen you." "I am Iris Mullins," that lady replied stiffly. "Oh, I thought you were Dodo." "You used to be Dodo to me." Crispin turned to Tuppence. "Mrs. Beresford, I'm very pleased to meet you. If I might advise you, I shouldn't drink your coffee." "Oh, dear, let me take the cup away." Miss Mullins pressed forward. In a moment, Crispin stood between her and Tuppence. "No, Dodo dear, I wouldn't do that," he said. "I'd rather have charge of it myself. It would be nice to have an analysis of exactly what's in it just now. Possibly you brought a little dose with you, did you? Quite easy to put a little dose into the cup as you're handing it to the invalid, or the supposed invalid. I assure you I did no such thing. Oh, do call your dog off. Hannibal showed every desire to run her down the stairs. He wants to see you off the premises, said Tommy. He's rather particular about that. He likes biting people who are going out through the front door. Ah, Albert, there you are. I thought you'd be just outside the other door. Did you see what happened, by any chance? Albert put his head round the dressing-room door across the room. I saw all right. I watched her through the crack of the hinge. Yep, put something in the Mrs. Cup, she did. Very neat, good as a conjurer. But she did it all right. I don't know what you mean, said Miss Mullins. Oh dear, I must go. I've got an appointment. It's very important. She shot out of the room and down the stairs. Hannibal gave one glance and went after her. Mr. Crispin showed no sign of animosity, but he too left hurriedly in pursuit. I hope she's a good runner, said Tuppence, because if she isn't, Hannibal will catch up with her. My word, he's a good guard dog, isn't he? Tuppence, that was Mr. Crispin, sent us by Mr. Solomon. Came at a very good moment, didn't he? Don't break that cup and don't pour any of that coffee away until we've got a bottle or something to put it in. It's going to be analysed and we're going to find out what's in it. Put your best dressing gown on, Tuppence, and come down to the sitting room, and we'll have a drink before lunch. And now, I suppose, said Tuppence despondently, we shall never know what any of it means, or what it is all about. Never mind, said Tommy. We dealt with the Mullins very well, I think. Hannibal, said Tuppence, was a very good dog there, wasn't he? Yes, said Tommy. He told us very definitely, like he just leapt for that pampas grass. His nose told him, I suppose. He's got a wonderful nose. I can't say my nose warned me, said Tuppence. I just thought she was rather an answer to prayer turning up, and I quite forgot we were only supposed to take someone who had worked for Mr. Solomon. Well, anyway, said Tommy, you must have realised, as I did, when Hannibal let go all out in your bedroom, that Miss Mullins was the person who, dressed as a man, hid in the pampas grass and shot at you. And we were right in thinking that she'd have another go while I was immured in bed with my wound, said Tuppence. A good thing we made our arrangements, wasn't it, Tommy? Quite right, said Tommy. Yes, I thought she probably wouldn't leave it too long to come to the conclusion that one of her bullets had taken effect, and that you'd be laid up in bed. So she came along full of feminine solicitude, said Tuppence. But there was Albert on permanent guard watching every step she took, every single thing she did, said Tommy. Tuppence, did you see Mullins, or Dodo, as Crispin called her, put anything in your cup of coffee? No, said Tuppence. I must admit that I didn't. You see, she seemed to catch her foot in something, and she knocked over that little table with our nice vase on it, made a great deal of apology, and my eye of course was on the broken vase, and whether it was too bad to mend, so I didn't see her. Albert did, said Tommy. Saw it through the hinge, where he'd enlarged it a crack so that he could look through. Then it was a very good idea to put Hannibal in confinement in the bathroom, Tuppence continued, pleased with both of them, but leaving the door only half-latched, because, as we know, Hannibal is very good at opening doors. Not, of course, that they're completely latched, but if they're only half-latched, he takes one great spring and comes in like a Bengal tiger. Yes, said Tommy. That is quite a good description. And now I suppose Mr. Crispin, or whatever his name is, has finished making his inquiries? Although how he thinks Miss Mullins can be connected with Mary Jordan, or with a dangerous figure like Jonathan Cain who only exists in the past. Tommy shook his head. I don't think he only exists in the past. I think there may be a new edition of him, a rebirth, as you might say. There are a lot of young members, lovers of violence at any price, the Merry Mugger Society, and the super-fascists regretting the splendid days of Hitler and his merry group. The front doorbell rang, and Hannibal dashed from the room tiger-style to kill any intruder who might be wishing to enter the sacred precincts which he guarded. Tommy came back with an envelope. Addressed to us both, he said. Shall I open it? Go ahead, said Tuppence. Tommy tore the envelope open. "Well," he said, "this raises possibilities for the future." "What is it?" "It's an invitation from Mr. Robinson, to you and to me, to dine with him on a date the week after next, when he hopes you'll be fully recovered and yourself again, in his country house, somewhere in Sussex, I think." "Do you think he'll tell us anything then?" said Tuppence. "I think he might," said Tommy. "Think there'll be anyone else at Mr. Robinson's?" "Possibly Colonel Pikeway." "In that case," said Tuppence, "I'd better take a cough lozenge with me, hadn't I? Anyway, I do so want to see Mr. Robinson. I can't believe he's as fat and yellow as you say he is." "What a lovely meal," said Tuppence. She looked round at the assembled company. They had passed from the dining table and were now in the library, sitting round the coffee table. Mr. Robinson, as yellow and even larger than Tuppence had visualized him, was smiling behind a big and beautiful George II coffee pot. Next to him was Mr. Crispin, and Colonel Pikeway sat next to Tommy. Colonel Pikeway said, "What a very well-behaved dog you have there, Mrs. Beresford." Hannibal, who was lying under the table with his head resting on Tuppence's foot, looked out with his misleading, best angelic expression and moved his tail gently. "I understood he was a very fierce dog," said Mr. Robinson, casting an amused glance at Tuppence. "You should see him in action," said Mr. Crispin, alias Horsham. "I understand," Mr. Robinson looked at Crispin Horsham, "that if I were to pay a visit to Mr. and Mrs. Beresford at their own home, I might be 200 pieces." "Hannibal takes his duties very seriously," said Mr. Crispin. "He's a well-bred guard dog and never forgets it." "You understand his feelings, of course, as a security officer," said Mr. Robinson. His eyes twinkled. "You and your husband have done a very remarkable piece of work, Mrs. Beresford," said Mr. Robinson. "We are indebted to you. Now I want to ask you a question. If you will answer it by giving me the information, I shall be enormously pleased." Tuppence stared at him with wide-open eyes. "I can't imagine." She paused inquiringly. Mr. Robinson smiled at her. "You have a list, or so your husband tells me. He didn't tell me what that list was, quite rightly. That list is your secret property. But I, too, know what it is to suffer curiosity." Again his eyes twinkled. Tuppence was suddenly aware that she liked Mr. Robinson very much. "It's terribly silly," she said as she fumbled in her evening bag. "In fact, it's rather more than silly. It's mad." Mr. Robinson took the sheet of foolscap she handed to him. "Read it aloud if you like," said Tuppence. "I don't really mind." Mr. Robinson glanced at it, then handed it to Crispin. "Angus, you have a clearer voice than I have." Mr. Crispin took the sheet and read in an agreeable tenor, "Black Arrow, Alexander Parkinson, Mary Jordan did not die naturally. Oxford and Cambridge porcelain Victorian seats. Grin Hen Low, K.K., Matilda's stomach, Cain and Abel, true love." He stopped and looked at his host, who turned his head towards Tuppence. "My dear," said Mr. Robinson, "let me congratulate you. You must have a most unusual mind. To arrive from this list of clues at your final discoveries is really most remarkable. Now I am sure you want to know what all this has been about." "Oh!" exclaimed Tuppence. "Are you really going to tell us something? How wonderful!" "Some of it begins, as you surmised, with the Parkinsons," said Mr. Robinson. "That is to say, in the distant past. My own great-grandmother was a Parkinson. Some things I learnt from her. The girl known as Mary Jordan was in our service. She had connections in the Navy. Her mother was Austrian, and so she herself spoke German fluently. The present trend of political thinking is that hush-hush, necessary as it is at certain times, should not be preserved indefinitely. There are things in the records that should be made known as a definite part of our country's past history. 3 or 4 volumes are due to be published within the next couple of years, authenticated by documentary evidence. What went on in the neighbourhood of Swallow's Nest, as your house was called at that time, will certainly be included. There were certain politicians who had prestige and who were thought of very highly. There were 1 or 2 leading journalists who had enormous influence and used it unwisely. There were men, even before the First World War, who were intriguing against their own country. After that war, there were young men who graduated from universities and who were fervent believers and often active members of the Communist Party without anyone knowing of that fact. And even more dangerous, fascism was coming into favour, with a full progressive programme of eventual union with Hitler, posing as a lover of peace, and thereby bringing about a quick end to the war. Your present village, Mrs. Beresford, became the headquarters of a certain group just before the First World War. It was such a nice old world village. Nice people had always lived there, all patriotic, doing different kinds of war work. A good naval harbour. A good-looking young naval commander, came of a good family, father had been an admiral. A good doctor practising there, much loved by all his patients. They enjoyed confiding their troubles to him. He was in general practice. Hardly anyone knew that he had had special training in chemical warfare, in poison gases. And later, before the Second World War, Mr. Kane, spelt with a K, lived in a pretty thatched cottage by the harbour, and had a particular political creed. Not fascist, oh no, just peace before everything to save the world. A creed rapidly gaining a following on the continent and in numerous other countries abroad. None of that is what you really want to know, Mrs. Beresford, but you've got to realize the background first, a very carefully contrived one, and it's where Mary Jordan was sent to find out, if she could, just what was going on. Tuppence had been looking at a picture on the wall, which for some reason looked familiar. It was a mere sketch of a boy's head. "Is that... surely—" "Yes," said Mr. Robinson. "That's Alexander Parkinson. He was only 11 then. He was a grandson of a great-aunt of mine." Mr. Robinson paused. "So, Mary Jordan went to the Parkinsons in the role of a nursery governess. It seemed a good, safe observation post. One wouldn't ever have believed what would come of it." "It wasn't one of the Parkinsons?" asked Tuppence. "Oh, no, my dear. I understand that the Parkinsons were not involved in any way, that there were others, guests and friends, staying in the house that night, the night of the census. One of those names linked up in a significant manner. The daughter of the local doctor, about whom I have just told you, came down to visit her father, as she often did, and asked the Parkinsons to put her up that night as she had brought 2 friends with her. Those friends were all right, but later her father was found to be heavily involved in all that was going on in that part of the world. She herself, it seemed, had helped in the garden some weeks earlier, and was responsible for foxgloves and spinach being planted in close proximity. It was she who had taken the mixture of leaves to the kitchen on the fatal day. The doctor, her father, explained that he had known such a thing happen before, and his evidence at the inquest resulted in a verdict of misadventure. The fact that a cocktail glass had been swept off a table and smashed by accident that same night attracted no attention. Perhaps, Mrs. Beresford, you would be interested to know that history might have repeated itself. You were shot at from a clump of pampas grass, and later the lady calling herself Miss Mullins tried to add poison to your coffee cup. I understand she is actually a granddaughter or great-niece of the original criminal doctor, and before the Second World War she was a disciple of Jonathan Cain. That's how Crispin knew of her, of course, and your dog definitely disapproved of her and took prompt action. Indeed, we now know that it was she who coshed old Isaac." Mr. Robinson looked grave. "We now have to consider an even more sinister character. The genial, kindly doctor was idolized by everyone in the place, but it seems most probable on the evidence that it was the doctor who was responsible for Mary Jordan's death, though at the time no one would have believed it. He had wide scientific interests, an expert knowledge of poisons, and did pioneering work in bacteriology. It has taken 60 years before the facts have become known. Only Alexander Parkinson, a schoolboy at the time, began having ideas. Mary Jordan did not die naturally, quoted Tuppence softly. It must have been one of us. Was it the doctor who found out what Mary was doing? No. The doctor had not suspected her, but somebody else had. Up till then she had been completely successful. The naval commander had worked with her as planned. The information she passed to him was genuine, and he didn't realize that it was mainly stuff that didn't matter, though it had been made to sound important. The naval plans and secrets which he passed to her, she duly delivered on her days off in London, obeying instructions as to when and where. Queen Mary's garden in Regent's Park was one, I believe, and the Peter Pan statue in Kensington Gardens was another. We learned a good deal in this way, especially about minor officials in certain embassies. But all that's in the past, Mrs. Beresford. Long, long in the past. Colonel Pikeway coughed and suddenly took over. But history repeats itself, Mrs. Beresford. Everyone learns that sooner or later. A nucleus recently reformed in Hollowquay. People who knew about it set things up again. Perhaps that's why Miss Mullins returned. Certain hiding places were used again. Secret meetings took place. Once more money became significant. Where it came from, where it went to. Mr. Robinson here was called in, and then our old friend Beresford came along and started giving me some very interesting information. It fitted in with what we had already suspected. Background scenery being set up in anticipation. A future being prepared which would be controlled and run by one particular political figure in this country. A man with a certain reputation and making more converts and followers every day. The confidence trick in action once again. But now we know more or less what we want and need to know, and that's partly because of what you two have contributed. Mr. Robinson cleared his throat and rose to his feet. I want to propose a toast to Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Beresford in acknowledgement of the service they have rendered to their country. It was drunk enthusiastically. And if I may, I will propose a further toast, said Mr. Robinson. To Hannibal. There, Hannibal, said Tuppence, stroking his head. You've had your health drunk, almost as good as being knighted or having a medal. Hannibal, may I be permitted to tap you on the shoulder, said Mr. Robinson. Hannibal took a step towards him, received a tap on the shoulder, and gently wagged his tail. I hereby create you a Count of this realm. Count Hannibal. Isn't that lovely? Said Tuppence. What a proud dog you ought to be. End of Postern of Fate by Agatha Christie. Performed by Beau McKenna.